welcome to Jason the Old Millennial. My name is Jason. I'm here with my good friend Norin Ratty 9,
What's up,
aka
Jason? Thank you for having me. Thank you. Thank you.
yeah, uh, Robert or Norin. I'll call him Norin for now. This we're doing a history of horror movies, basically, and TV and whatnot on the channel. Uh, just some backstory. I thought I'd give a little backstory towards this. Actually been trying to get this together for about 2 years now, and really, because 2 years ago I met Norn for the first time on Mike's Did You Z That channel, Z Talks, his what he used to do all the time. He got people together and we would get asked questions in the comments and answer movie questions like that. Anyway, so it was my first time doing Z Talks, and it was Norn's first time doing Z Talks as well. And never met Norin, never heard of him, didn't know anything. And we're in the backstage, and it's like, oh, here's a guy named Norin, and I'm like, oh, now I'm a little nervous. I'm like, I don't know this guy, and now I gotta. I don't know. I always get nervous when I meet new people, because I'm like, oh, are we gonna hit it off, or are we gonna get along well? You know.
Yeah.
I don't know why that always comes to my mind. I always do usually, but I always think, oh God, what if this person's a jerk? I don't know. Like you meet someone for the first time, and so you're like, oh, okay. I hope this goes well. And I felt like we hit it off great that first Z Talks. I guess that was my feeling.
Yeah,
Was like
definitely. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
some people you don't maybe necessarily hit it off at first, or you just personalities don't mesh. Maybe I don't know, but for me, I was like, I really like talking to Norin. Like, meeting him for the first time, I was like, man, I enjoyed our conversations in that Z Talks, and I don't know. So for me, immediately it was like, man, I thought we were connecting, I guess, and just meeting you one time, I was like, yeah, I want to do more stuff with this guy. I want to collaborate more and stuff like that. So I immediately was like trying to think of ideas to like, how can I get Norin on my channel to do some collaborations? Because I like to do more of these. And of course, I immediately realized Norin was a big horror guy. It's hard not to notice. He talks about horror a lot. Um, and so you might be thinking, Jason, you're not a horror fan. Why are you doing a live stream on horror? It makes no sense. But for me, it was like horror is a genre, a movie genre, and I like movie history, and I like learning about movie history, and I like, you know, reading and about history and stuff. And so horror is a genre that I thought it'd be fun to kind of research and kind of delve into the history of it and kind of see how it evolved over the years and the trends that, happen. And when I met Norin, I subscribed to his channel and I watched his channel. He talked about horror a lot, and it just felt like Norin was like an expert at it. Like, it's like not only does he like it, he like knows the history. It felt like, is that accurate to say?
Yeah, I know a great deal. Like I said, because growing up, just I wanted to get myself well versed in a lot of different horror. So, like, kind of every middle school, high school, then like adulthood, every kind of like little generation knock, I would discover new stuff, like either Italian horror, foreign horror, stuff like that, or then going like back to the black and white days, watching Universal Monster stuff. I know there's some old school, like more kind of non-sound type stuff they did, like the Cabinet of Dr. Calgary, stuff like that, the House of the Devil, which is a lot of those old black and white stuff that didn't have sound. But horror has been a genre that's been around for many decades. I think in general, as humans, we like that innate nature of being scared. We might not actually like, feeling scared, but the actual object or the actual process of going through it, or like, being on a roller coaster, we like that adrenaline rush. We like being scared, so I think that's always been involved in human culture somehow.
Very true. Very true. Um, I guess my question is first to start off kind of, how would you define horror?
Oh wow. For me personally, it's a lifestyle. It pretty much is, like, kind of, because it's like, yeah, we live it and breathe it. It's like something every day. It's part of my life. I'm in the horror community. I talk to other fans. I talk to writers, directors, people who do books and stuff like that. So it's all across the board. Like I've talked to different fandoms and different groups, and I feel like yeah, it's kind of a lifestyle now because even Spirit Halloween, like this has taken over. Like it used to be kind of a small time thing. Now it's in August. Spirit Halloween's up right away, all the way through September to October. Even the first week of November, you can still pick up some stuff for next year. On discount. So Halloween, I think, is growing too as in popularity. So yeah, for me, it's a whole lifestyle in of itself, I think.
Yeah, like for me, I have a hard time kind of defining horror in some senses. That like where does thriller end and horror begin, or how do those kind of intertwine? I
Yeah,
guess. And because you'll say, Psycho or Jaws is a horror movie, and I'll go, I don't know why I never thought of Psycho and Jaws as horror necessarily. To me, they're intense thrillers, but yet I don't know what's the difference between the two. It's sometimes I've had a hard time telling, like when do I
yeah,
say horror? When do I say it's a thriller? I suppose horror is a thriller
yeah,
automatically. Uh, I guess I always think of horror as like this. When you say horror movie, like I think, oh, there's a guy with a mask that's trying to kill people. That's what I think of. Like that's a very simplified. Like
yeah,
it's thrilling, but yet there's this factor. There's this being that just almost, well, maybe some reason, but for almost no reason, just senselessly killing random people. Like that's and there's all kind. That's just a slasher, I guess, kind of definition, but. Um,
yeah. So that kind of like really became popular, like yeah, in the '60s and '70s, like giallos and slashers and stuff. So that was kind of, I guess, like at that time, it was the modern version of horror and like what was evolving and everything. And now horror, like you said, has grown into this thing where it involves thrillers. It involves, other more hardcore horror films as well, but also introductory horror stuff like Scooby Doo or Courage the Cowardly Dog, which is very much more comedy horror. But that's a whole nother realm. It's kind of horror is the big umbrella, and then thriller and comedy and all of them kind of fall under that same umbrella a little bit.
Because horror, it could be like a scary monster, or I suppose it could just be a regular guy that just kills people. Usually, I feel like normally when I think of horror, it's supernatural. There's a supernatural element to it, but I suppose not always. You could just have just some crazy guy just killing people, I suppose. But
Yeah,
sometimes I feel like a lot of times, if I'm seeing something that's horror, it's like there's some supernatural element to it.
yeah,
Can't kill the guy. You shoot him and like he won't die. Like something's not
yeah.
right.
The classic like Donald Pleasance line, like I
Yeah.
put 6 slugs in him, and he wouldn't go down.
And but then you can have zombies and ghosts and stuff like that, of course, in the horror genre. So that's kind of a supernatural element too. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I don't know. So there's some movies I'm like, I feel like it's a thriller, but it could be horror. I guess to me, it's like if it's gross, it's horror. That's my like
That's
broad.
another element too. That yeah, if it so that's yeah, it depends on what's kind of your taste or your wheelhouse. You know what I mean? Like certain people, I know are scared of water. Like they're terrified of water. So more shark films or open water type movies or being stuck on an island. That kind of stuff kind of freaks them out.
Yeah, so I'm like, if there's a guy just killing people pretty intensely and very gory, whatever. And I'm like, okay, that's horror. That's not. It's like to me that I guess to me that's. And again, maybe there's exceptions to this, but I'm just like, I guess that's where I think of horror is like, all right, if you're killing people and you're grossing me out, it's like that's horror. That's not thriller anymore. I'm not thrilled. I'm just grossed out now, But
Yeah.
but I'm not a horror guy, so I get grossed out pretty easily. So I have a very I have a
Low
very
tolerance.
low tolerance. Yes, right. I have low
Yeah.
tolerance.
For me, like I guess my high tolerance came from mainly just like as a child. Like I was introduced to it at such a young age that it eventually became like that obsession thing. Like I got hooked on horror movies at the age where you just pop in VHSs over and over and over and you just rewatch them and rewatch them, you know what I mean? Until you can't see until the grain's all messed up because you rewatched the tape so many times, kind of stuff.
Oh yeah. Before we get into the beginning, I actually have a history, or have a horror trivia for you, Norn.
Nice.
I'm gonna test you on some horror knowledge here. We're gonna see how much.
Let's see how much I know.
Some of these, maybe you know, maybe you don't. I don't know. This is just for fun. But all right, first question I got is, what was the first horror movie to be nominated for Best Picture?
Oh wow. That's a good question. I want to say Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, but I'm not too positive. But I want to go with that one.
No, a little bit later than that one. Think Demon Possession.
Demon possess. Oh, okay. So, are we gonna go William Friedkin's Exorcist? Is it more of The Exorcist?
This, yeah, first horror movie to get nominated for Best Picture. I thought it was interesting.
Nice.
Yeah. Psycho. I love that movie. That definitely should belong on that list. Speaking of Psycho, in the movie Psycho, this object in the movie makes its first appearance in American movies. It's a kind of a object in the house that never been seen before in a movie.
Mm. I want to say it has to do with something with the beginning with her and the boyfriend, where like she's kind of. I want to say that, like, but I'm not too positive. Like, there's a couple things, but I want to say it's her because she's in her bra. I think in the beginning of the movie, she's actually topless, and like you can
Yeah,
see her bra, which was kind of rare at that time.
that's very true. That was, I would think that would be kind of, yeah. What do you call?
I mean, like risque at that time period, I guess, because it was the early '60s.
That'd be very scary. But the first thing is, or the thing that's never been seen before, is the toilet. You couldn't show the
Nice.
toilet in movie. You know, it was like one of those things. Was like you can't show a toilet. You can't allude that people go to the bathroom. You know, that's like, you know.
That's sacred. That's secret.
Yeah. So 1960, we see a toilet for, and you wouldn't think anything of it. You're like, oh, that's a normal object you see all the time.
Hmm.
Um, Compare that to what you see in chapter it or whatever, it chapter one or something. I don't know, or or
Yeah, I
training
like that.
or something. um, yeah, yeah, interesting. Yeah, you mentioned that. There's a lot of things in that movie that I feel like were, yeah, I doubt they've ever done before. It was the first time for a lot of
Yeah,
things. I mean, the shower scene, I don't think we've ever seen that before either.
yeah.
uh,
Alfred was pretty creative. Alfred was good because I think a lot of his stuff, like you said, more thrills. He kind of roots his stuff more in like characters. So you kind of get into the whole character story, the development of the character, their growth, or the journey they're going on. So you get more thrills like out of those moments.
well, you think, of course, I mean, the other thing is like you don't see beds together at that in the '60s. Married couples had separate beds. I mean, that's just how crazy it was with the,
Yeah.
can't allude to, you couldn't say the word pregnant in TV shows. I know. You can't allude that people had sex over. I don't know why. It's like, okay. All right. What name did Spielberg give the mechanical shark in Jaws?
Oh wow, that's a good one. Actually, that's a good one. I should know that one, huh? I'm not too big of a Jaws fan, but I should know that one. I know Angel's gonna be upset at me. She's gonna be like, "Damn." Yeah, that one. I actually, off the top of my head, I don't have any names to guess.
He called it Bruce.
Bruce. Okay, nice.
Yes. I don't know why he just gave that name to the mechanical shark. The
Yeah, which famously like barely works. Like I know, like there's a lot of stories that they have with that movie where like they struggle to get that shark to do just about anything in that movie.
Yeah, so you didn't see it for most of the movie because of that, which helped the intensity of it. Yeah, if you ever watch Finding Nemo, the shark is named Bruce in that movie, and that's the reason. But yeah.
Nice, a callback. Cool.
All right. Are you familiar with the Aliens movies?
Yeah, Ridley Scott's Aliens. Yeah, I've seen those movies. Yeah.
Do you know how long did it take between the first movie and the second movie to be made?
Ooh, I want to say almost. I want to say almost like 6, 7 years. It was a good minute, I think.
7 years. Yep. There you
Yeah.
go. Got it. Yeah, Alien, I'm guessing, was a hit movie, but it took 7 years to make the second one because of legal disputes. I didn't. I was kind of like reading into it a little bit, I didn't quite understand what was going on, but for some reason, stupid, uh, legal stuff between I guess the company and people that are making it. I don't know.
Yeah,
So,
the creators. Yeah, a lot of that stuff it kind of sucks because if you get tied up in legal rights issues, like Friday the 13th, they were tied up in the courtroom legal issues for almost a decade.
oh man, yeah. So you think Aliens would come right after Alien, but no, it took like 7 years. I thought that was surprising. Uh, yeah. All right. Michael Myers' mask was whitewashed from what famous sci-fi character?
That was Kirk William Shatner.
Captain Kirk. Right. Kind of. That's a weird. It works really well. I mean, it's kind of a. I guess it's an expressionless, creepy mask, but
Yeah, it was kind of cool how the story, how like, yeah, they just had to go out and search like the Halloween stores, and then they found a Shatner mask, and they just took off the eyebrows and they whitewashed it.
yeah, that's always funny. I thought to me. All right. What horror movie in the last 20 years broke the record previously held by Blair Witch Project on the movie that made the best returns on its investment? Which that basically means it didn't cost very much money to make, but it made a bunch of money in the movie theater. So, what movie kind
Ooh,
of broke that record that didn't cost a lot but made a bunch in the movie theater?
I have kind of two answers for this one. So there's two that I possibly. My first thought, I was leaning towards Paranormal Activity. That was like my first thought, kind of leaning towards that one. Or what was the other one that I was thinking of? We'll go with that one because the other one kind of fell out of my brain a little bit. We'll go Paranormal Activity.
That is Paranormal Activity.
Nice.
Low budget, made really good money at the movie theater. So, and that's a good thing about horror movies, I guess. Is usually they're low budget, I think, and so you have a lot of chances to, even if you don't make a bunch of money, you can still make a lot. That's why I think
Yeah.
they put out a bunch of horror movies every year because they're cheaper to make usually,
Yeah.
and people go out and see horror movie no matter what it is. It's like you stick a horror movie in there, people are going to watch it. I think
Yeah,
so.
there's a lot of fun date night movies, guys, girls taking out their girls, jumping in your arms, when they're scared.
Like I think Saw is the same way. Saw was just this little budget movie that just took off, and yeah, that happens a lot, like with Paranormal Activity. Um, what horror movie from the '90s is considered the first found footage movie?
Oh, I want to say Ghost Watch, but I don't think that's going to be the answer. Like for me, because that was the earliest experience I ever had with a movie that was kind of found footage, and it was from the '90s. I think it was from '91, but
Okay,
we'll say Blair Witch Project.
yeah, I've written down as the.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the first, but it feels like it's the first major movie that really made an impact that was found footage, as far as I can think.
Yeah, I think because Ghost Watch at that time it was just a British release, and it came out and they released it on BBC, and they filmed it with real anchors and newswomen that worked at the BBC network, and
Yeah.
they filmed it like it was them going to a real haunted house. So it kind of had that almost Orson Welles kind of War of the Worlds, radio
Oh,
footage, like sound feel to it. Everybody was like, "It's really happening! Like we know these anchors and these newswomen; they wouldn't lie to us." So yeah, that was a really cool one.
yeah, that's a brilliant idea. I like that idea. I'm trying to think now. Like, yeah, send. I don't know who's a famous news anchor now, but yeah, send a famous news anchor in, and
Like David Muir, like World News, you get David Muir to go into a haunted mansion or a haunted something.
it's real. Yeah, that's a good idea. What is the first Christmas horror movie?
Oh, well, I know for me, my first and only like the king daddy of Christmas horror films for me is Black Christmas, which was done by Bob Clark, who did A Christmas Story as well.
That's what I've written down. Is Black Christmas. As far
Yeah.
as I'm aware of that. uh, what is the highest grossing horror movie?
I want to say It Chapter One, I think, but I don't know. I think it was It Chapter One because Andy Muschietti made a lot of money with those movies.
Good job. Yeah, that's it. The first movie. Yep, highest grossing came out 2017. I think it made like $700 million. Yeah, it just blew up.
That was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. What is the longest running horror franchise to date?
Oh wow, longest running horror franchise. I want to say, damn. I want to say it's Amityville Horror just because it's public domain now and they've made so many. I think there's like 30 plus Amityville type horror movies now.
You are correct. Amityville Horror is number one. According to what this was kind of a hard one to actually research. I kept getting different answers for this, but the one I'm going with that I saw that said Amityville Horror has 23 movies, is what it says. Um, Puppet Master has 13. You'd be happy to hear.
That's right.
Says Friday the 13th and Halloween have 12 in their franchise, what I
Yeah.
read. The Dead franchise, which is the Night of the Living Dead, I guess, and Living Dead and whatever.
Yeah.
There's 11 of those. Hellraiser, 10. Uh, Children of the Corn, I think, also had like 10, which I was surprised. I didn't know there was that many Children of the Corn.
Yeah, they made a lot of straight to video
Made a
kind
bunch
of movies.
Nightmare on Elm Street had 9. And then Saw and Chainsaw Massacre had 8. So those were kind of the big franchises. Had the most. Puppet Master, interesting. Just you wouldn't
Yeah,
think, but that one. That
yeah,
was one.
it's kind of cool. Charlie Band, he committed to that franchise, so that's like his baby.
I just got introduced to that last year, I think. Puppet Master. What horror character has the most kills?
Oh, I want to say now. I think it's Michael. Now I'm not too positive, but I think Michael Myers has the most. If we're just talking like slasher killers, I think.
Well, yeah, this is another one. According to my research, it was Pinhead.
Yeah, okay,
It says he has 321 kills.
nice. Yeah, because we did have that new movie too. We have the remake now that's on Hulu and stuff.
And I don't know much about Hellraiser, but is there a reason why he has so many kills? Does that make sense that he would have most
I
kills?
feel like some of them I wouldn't classify him as slasher because sometimes he does the bidding of like the Leviathan box, so it's kind of not his choice to do what he does. You know what I mean, kind of thing. But if you want to classify him just straight up, yeah, as like killings and a killer in a movie, there's quite a bit. Yeah, he does get quite a bit of people throughout the movies, and they stretch over time. Like you have one of the movies takes place in the future, and then also takes place in the past too. So there's a good chunk of Hellraiser movies.
Yeah. According to, as I said, my research had Jason Voorhees at 150 kills, Freddy Krueger at 79, and Chucky at 67. So that's what I had.
Nice.
Uh, I don't know about Michael Myers. I didn't have him on my list, but again, maybe this is wrong. This is what I researched. So that's correct. I thought that was interesting. I wouldn't think Pinhead. Pinhead, I don't know much about. So, all right, last question. What actor has the most appearances as a horror character?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah,
Not the same horror character, just in horror movies.
the same horror character. Yeah.
Okay, the same horror character, the most appearances as this character. Damn, I want to go. I want to go. I kind of want to say go really old school and say like Bela Lugosi. I kind of want to say or Boris Karloff, like one of them, because Boris I know did The Mummy and Frankenstein,
Yeah, that's true.
and then Bela was Dracula, and he did it for multiple movies too, because he came back for Abbott and Costello, and we'll
Good.
go with Bela.
Christopher Lee played Dracula 10 times.
Damn, Christopher. See, I do forget about Christopher Lee sometimes. He was really good. He did a lot of good stuff.
You said old school, so I thought you had the right idea, but you just went too old. The other ones I found that were the close ones were Robert Englund playing Freddy Krueger 8 times, and Tobin Bell playing the Jigsaw Killer, whatever, 8 times.
Yeah.
So those are the 3 that I saw that had the most appearances, which I thought was interesting. So I'm guessing that when you get to like Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers, he has a mask on, so you can get anybody probably for those roles. I'm guessing. So
Yeah, sometimes, yeah, there's been stuntmen and different people. Like, I think the only person that's came back multiple times for Jason was Kane. Kane Hodder did it, I think, 4 times.
yeah, but like Freddy Krueger, it's like it has to be Robert Englund. Like nobody else can do that part like he can. Or I guess I don't know who the guy who did Pinhead. I didn't have him written down, but I suppose he played that character quite a bit too.
Yeah, Doug, he did that. I think he did that 7 times. Doug Bradley, he was something like that. It was like 6 or 7 times.
He's another one you can put on that list of like playing that guy so many times. And then Tobin Bell. Tobin Bell. He's just another one. I don't know if again. I don't. I've only seen one Saw movie, so I don't know how vitable he is to it. But I guess he is because when I think of Jigsaw, I think of that puppet, but I don't know how much Tobin's in it or how much he's doing the voice of that puppet, on the tricycle thing or whatever.
Yeah, they kind of course corrected hardcore. So like they did certain stuff in the timeline, and then they just backed up and did prequels. So Saw X, the most recent one, took place between Saw 2 and 3, I think.
All right. So hopefully that was fun.
Definitely.
You got some right. Good. All right. If I'm going back to history, I start with the 1930s. You could go to the silent film era, but I think it's more interesting to start with the 30s with the Universal monster movies. I think it's kind of the big era that really starts the horror genre, in my opinion. I don't know what to call it. I call it Universal monsters. I think they call it gothic horror maybe as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have
I usually call it, the Universal Monsters, just kind of era, because mainly they were, like you said, the most important ones that kind of cinematography wise, style wise, look wise, and costumes and stuff, they really kind of portrayed what horror was at that time.
Yeah, so I feel like, but I'm guessing like any horror movie probably gets its roots from this period. It kind of starts the horror genre in a sense. We got Dracula come out in 1931. That's like the first big one with Bela Lugosi, as you talked about, playing Dracula in it. I did watch this movie recently, so I kind of know what's going on. And I know you've been watching these, so you're kind of getting used to these or whatever, getting the
More knowledge, because these were ones like I seen some of them, like a good probably like 6 or 8 of them, but then now I'm like got that pack that has 30 plus movies in it, so I've just been kind of going through them, familiarizing myself with the era.
Yeah, me too. I've been trying to watch them recently. The good the good thing is they're like an hour and 15 minutes long. All of them are short. I mean, so they're easy to get through. My only criticism is that I feel like you just kind of get into the plot and the movie's about over. I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm just now getting into the story and we're wrapping it up. 'Cause I remember I was watching it and there's like 5 minutes left in this movie. We gotta wrap this thing up.
Yeah.
And next thing I know, they like they go and they put the stake through him or whatever, and I'm like, oh gosh, that was quick. Like that's anticlimactic. Like I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, Dracula. I think it's shot very well. Like I was watching it, I thought for 1931, really well shot movie. Like I thought it was. I thought it was really well. I liked the way they shot it and everything, cinematography and everything for an old black and white movie. I thought it was done very well. I mean, Bela Lugosi just he knocks it out of the park. I mean, that is Dracula. Like when you think of Dracula, it's because of Bela Lugosi, I would say.
Yeah, the face, he's very iconic. Yeah, the face and the stare, the eyes.
The stare, yeah, the close up. It's funny. Every time they close him up, they put like light, like it was like dark except for his eyes lit up. I think is what they did. And yeah, a lot of close up of his face just with his eyes lit up. That was interesting. Um, yeah, so we get introduced a lot of things like uh Dracula, which I guess was a book, and then it was like a play, and then
Yeah.
the ghost was in the play, I guess, and they made the movie with him in it. But yeah, you get the yeah, of course, the sucking of the blood, iconic. He moves so slowly though. I was watching it, and he just like moves very, very. Almost all these horror movies, the horror monsters move so slow. I'm like, these guys are so slow. It's not that scary. They're just, geez, can we speed it up a little bit? And everybody just looks at him and screams until they get killed. Um, uh, I don't think that many people get killed either in this movie. There's a couple.
Yeah, there's not that many. Yeah, that back in the day, there wasn't. I would say more of, like you said, the creature features, like Gojira type movies, or them, that one that I recently watched, like them, those movies have a lot higher body counts than some of the like Wolfman or Frankenstein or stuff like that.
You get the bat, him turning into like a bat, a lot of bat shots of the bat like so you get that whole thing, you get the whole thing of him, you can't see him in a mirror, I think, which was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get the whole garlic and he goes out and you got Van Helsing in here as well. The kind of this old doctor guy that's an expert. I guess I didn't quite understand. He was like an expert at vampires for some reason. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, he's like an expert in the occult and stuff. Yeah, they don't really dive into him as much, or as like, usually like there's more modern adaptations that go into the whole Van Helsing thing a little bit better than that original one.
Yeah. One time he attacks him and he pulls out the cross and he goes back. So uh, um, yeah, I was gonna say garlic, yeah, and the stake through the heart at the end. He realized he so, and he can only come at night. So yeah, all the classic Dracula stuff is in this movie, which was real cool. I like Renfield. Renfield is probably my favorite character. That guy was crazy. And it's funny because when he comes out first, he's just this like proper English guy, like, oh, we're doing a business deal, and then he's kind of this crazy guy for the rest of the movie. Fritz, I think his name, or something like that. But Renfield, we know him as.
Yeah.
Maybe he overacted, but it worked. I liked him. He was.
Yeah, there's
He also played Igor or Igor kind of character. Oops.
yeah, so it's kind of cool. I think what back in the day, more a lot of these movies they didn't have, like I said, the production or the visual effects, so they had to root themselves in more character acting type stuff.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, he played this and he played Igor or whatever in the Frankenstein movie, and he kind of got typecast, I guess. But yeah, I forget that name's actor's name, but he was really good. But to me, I would say Dracula. This is my take: is that he's maybe the most famous, well-known horror character of all time. Would that be accurate?
I would say like from back in the day, and then yeah, like just being known as vampire, that symbol, that character for decades. Yeah, people have been dressing up, and you have the widow's peak like you do up here with the hair, and then the classic teeth and the white and that costume. Yeah, is very iconic, definitely.
I mean, I feel like we've had Dracula in movies. I mean, I don't. We've had so many Dracula movies over the years. I feel like that's maybe the most representative character. Uh, that's my guess. Like I said, we've had these, and we had a bunch later in the '70s. I think we had a bunch of Dracula movies there as well. Um, and I think even recently we get Dracula movies, kind of in some sense. He's
Yeah,
a
we
character.
got the last voyage of the Demeter, which I think was it was like a two chapters in Bram Stoker's book. That was more of like the time before he got to our country, and
Yeah,
that's what that movie's about.
yeah, because the movie is all about for this one is he's traveling from Transylvania to London, and it takes place in London, I guess. So there's that, yeah, little part where he's on a boat. Um, but yeah, I mean, you have so many spin-off stuff. I think even had a Black Dracula, I think in the '80s or something like that. You have the Transylvania movies, the cartoon series on Dracula. I mean, he's
Yeah.
just where I have a soap thing that has Dracula on it, and I'm like, why is Dracula on here? I guess just it's Halloween time, so I have a Dracula face on my soap thing. So it's just the guy's everywhere. I feel
Oh
uh,
yeah.
just so iconic. Um, I do like the scene where when he's talking to this guy and Van Helsing looks at the mirror and he sees that he can't see Dracula. Like I thought that was a cool scene because oh,
Yeah.
oh, now you know he's Dracula or a vampire because he can't see him. uh, but yeah. Anyways, I would say like not a great movie to me just because it's slow moving and all that, but it's iconic, so it's like it's a must see for that. But um, yeah, and I like I said, I think it's very like historically important to the horror genre, I would say.
Definitely. Yeah, it's a very influential film. Yeah, this era, having Frankenstein, The Mummy, Creature from the Black Lagoon, there's a lot of good movies that happened from, the 30s going into the early 50s.
Yeah, exactly. I got Ryan here from Not Your Normal Geek. Sweet. Look forward to this one. Norin knows his stuff. Yeah, he does. That's why I got him on. Yeah. I'm just learning. I got some opinions. I don't know. There's some areas that I don't know anything about, so no one will help me.
That's what's cool too. Is that's why I like the horror community. Is like most of them, like all good parts of them, they're very accepting and stuff. Like be it if you're new to horror, or you're like returning to horror, have a weird relationship with it. Because I know people who were horror fans and then they kind of fell out of it, or like you said, later in life they discovered it. Throughout the early years they didn't really watch it at all, but now as an adult or as a teenager they discovered more stuff.
Ryan did a whole video on 5 horror movies that he can't watch or something. I don't know. Uh,
Nice.
I don't know if you saw that.
No, I'll
One,
have to check that one out. Yeah.
one of them was Jingle All the Way 2, which I thought was pretty funny. But yeah, then the other most iconic, I think, you have to say is Frankenstein. Came out in 1931 with Boris Karloff. I mean, that's another rough character that gets referenced a lot throughout history, I suppose, of horror movies. I don't know if he's in as many as Dracula. I feel like Dracula has more movies than Frankenstein, or more iconic. But yeah, Frankenstein. That the image that you have here is definitely still. I mean, I don't know if we get a lot of Frankensteins, but we get them every once in a while, I suppose.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think to be honest, I think it was more popular back in the day. Frankenstein. It's kind of coming back now. Like I think the most recent adaptation that we had was Lisa Frankenstein, which was from this year, which
That's right.
was kind of like a rom com horror type film, but it was still pretty good.
Yeah, I didn't know if that would count as part of the Frankenstein, but it did have Frankenstein in the title. uh, I remember they did an I Frankenstein, maybe 10
Yeah,
years
with
ago.
Aaron Eckhart. Yeah, that was I want to say early 2000s or mid 2000s.
And they're trying to make like this whole they're trying to make like a Frankenstein like fantasy lore thing. It was interesting. I don't know if it worked. I don't think they didn't make any more, so I don't know, but it was interesting. Um, yeah, Frankenstein. He's not as scary as a monster, I guess, to me as Dracula. And I was watching this. I mean, he's got the iconic, look. The Yeah, he's supposed to be kind of a big guy, and he's got the bolts and the flat head thing, and he just
Yeah.
doesn't talk. He just And in fact, it took a long time to get to the monster part. That's my big criticism of that movie. It's like it's mostly the scientist. The scientist, Dr. Frankenstein, the scientist, is the most interesting character probably because he's just obsessed with this whole playing God thing. And then you get the monster finally, and the monster's main thing is just he chokes people out. I think that's his. I was like, I guess that's scary, but it's like, and I think Frankenstein should have been maybe a little bit bigger because I was watching. I was like, this guy doesn't look that big. Like I can take him. Uh, I suppose he's supernaturally strong. Maybe just there and just like goes and he walks very slowly and you do fire and then
Yeah.
he still chokes the guy out even with the guy with fire. So I'm like that didn't work, but uh, pretty cool ending though is with the whole you get the famous.
The
Uh,
building like on fire, yeah, after like they're all coming to like just get them.
Yeah, the angry villagers and the torches, like you get the whole thing, yeah, and sending the whole thing on fire. That's how they get him. But he comes back for other movies, so I guess he didn't die. But uh, yeah, I mean, iconic. Still, it's a little slow movie, but that's to be expected. It's 1931. I suppose that was scary at the time, though. It's fun. Do you ever try to put yourself in those shoes? Like, obviously, it's not scary now, but it,
It's more like for me, it's more of the old movies. It's like the concepts. When you think of the concepts, conceptually, like when they came up with the stuff, it's scary. You know what I mean? The concept of playing God or bringing something to life and then being responsible for it. You know what I mean? No matter what, like whatever comes out of this monster. So, I think just conceptually, the old
yeah,
movies. That's what was the most horrifying thing about them.
yeah, because brand new to that time period audience, I suppose, these kind of monsters that we're coming up with. Again, it's based off of a book series and all that. Um, yeah, Boris Karloff, of course, iconic for that character. Um, yeah, I don't know much more to say about, I guess, that one, except, I mean, the whole bringing him to life is probably the most iconic scene. It's just,
Yeah, that's a very good scene. Yeah, in terms of sci-fi horror, this is probably one of the biggest influential movies. Definitely.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Then 1932, we get The Mummy with Boris Karloff again. I only saw about 10 minutes of this. I only caught a little bit of it. So I'm not too
This
far
one,
into.
Yeah, this one I've always had a weird relationship with. Like my wife likes the Mummy a lot, but me, I got introduced to the Stephen Sommers, Brendan Fraser movies first.
Me
So
too.
that's my first connection with them. So I've always viewed the Mummy as like an action adventure kind of Tomb Raider type,
Yeah,
story, and then when you watch this one, it's more about love, and it's about like, love transcending time and all this stuff, and him looking for his lover and everything. So it's a lot different of a story, but I like it, but it's more of one that I have to look at and be like, I see the what people appreciate about it, but I don't love it as much as I love some of the other ones.
yeah. I knew you had that kind of low on your tier list comparatively. Um, yeah, I would say the makeup work is really good. Like I was impressed because
Yeah.
and it's funny, the mummy comes alive in like the first 10 minutes. Like I've only seen like 10 minutes, and the guy's already. So I'm like, oh, that's cool. He's already going around. Like, all right, so we'll get some more kills maybe in this one. We'll see. So if he doesn't kill the first guy he sees, I was like, oh, this guy's dead, and he like doesn't kill him. Like, what the heck? Like,
Yeah, he just goes like maniacally insane, like laughing all crazy and shit.
exactly. I'm guessing he probably chokes people out too. I don't know what his power is, but that's my guess. Yeah, again, Mummy is the one that's you see throughout history. Kind of, it's not to me. Again, it's not as popular as a horror character as maybe Dracula. Um, we had the most popular probably is those Brendan Fraser movies, which I like. I have them. I have the steelbook of those Mummy movies because I saw them in the theater and I was a fan because they're more action oriented. There's some horror
Yeah.
though. There's some horrific
Oh,
stuff.
definitely.
People get killed horrifically actually. So there's a horror element still in the movie. I think the design of the mummy is pretty good.
Yeah, Emotep. Yeah, his design is really cool. Definitely for sure.
Probably the best design. The problem with the mummy is just this guy that's wrapped up, so it's not the most scary looking thing maybe, except for like I said, the mummy movies. He was really well designed. He was scary looking. Um, see, Mark says, I always figured I could outrun. Yeah, exactly. I thought too. Like I can outrun this guy. Like just get out. Yeah. It's funny. We recently, most recently, I guess, we had this mummy movie with Tom Cruise, but it bombed really badly at the box office. So,
Yeah.
uh, and that was supposed to start this whole uh, a new Universal Monster franchise, and that movie bombed. And so they're not doing it anymore. So
Yeah,
like,
there's no hope for that one. Yeah, that was one I only watched that one once actually when it first came out, and that was it.
yeah, I don't know. People aren't into mummy movies maybe anymore, and I don't know if that works anymore. Today's audience, I don't know. It's a harder, I think, character, but uh, then we got the Invisible Man, which I did watch last night. I just watched this one last night. The Invisible Man,
Nice.
Claude Rains, which I thought was cool because Claude Rains I know from Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Casablanca. I mean, this really great actor, and he's a little bit
Yep.
younger here. You don't really see him till the very end. It's funny because he's wrapped up the whole movie. So, uh, but yeah, this was an interesting one because this is definitely more of a character that's not scary looking necessarily, and he's not intimidating necessarily, but uh, the good
He
thing is,
wreaks havoc. He has a high body count. He wreaks havoc.
yeah, he wreaks havoc. He talks a lot, which is interesting. He makes a more interesting character, I think, because he has more lines than the other. You don't think of the Invisible Man as much as a horror character, I guess. We don't see as much of the Invisible Man, I would say.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an outlier in this area, I feel like, because he's not. I don't know if he's supernatural in his strength or anything, though he does some things. So I don't know if he gets super strength too. I suppose. Uh, the coolest thing though is just how they were able to make it look like he was moving. The visible guy was moving around, and how they moved stuff. And uh,
Yeah, like when his pants are dancing around by themselves and everything, and he's like singing down the street.
that was, what the heck is going on? Yeah, it's funny because he just went crazy. It's one of those things where it's like this guy was a normal scientist, I think, and then this invisible thing made him go maniacal, like murderer.
Yep.
Like, wow, he's like, I got power. I'm gonna, yeah. And he's very like laughing, maniacal, like villain. Like I was like, wow, I didn't know it was gonna go this way. I thought the Invisible Man was like a tragic character or something.
Yeah, like he did it, and you're just like you were gonna feel sympathy for him, and kind of want him to fix himself.
Yeah, no sympathy. No, he just wants to kill people. I was like, what is going on with this? Like, I guess he felt godlike powers because he was invisible and he could, do things and all that. But yeah, it was an interesting movie. I think it's a better one that I've seen so far is Invisible Man. Uh,
Yeah, I
just
really like that one.
just for the effects, the practical effects, and the Claude Rains performance, and the design. Actually, I like the he has to wrap his head up so you can kind of get a sense of what his head looks like, and I thought that was kind of cool idea. And then he has to wear clothes and gloves and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But
that's why I like it because this one it's really cool and they have modern versions that really tap into things that they don't talk about in this movie, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Like in Hollow Man, like the reason he can't sleep is because his eyelids are invisible. Like when he closes his eyes, like he can't see him; he sees right through him. So it's very hard for the Invisible Man to sleep. And there's other reasons why he just kind of slowly goes insane.
okay, yeah, that was more of a slow, insane kind of thing, wasn't it? Hollow Man with Kevin Bacon.
Yeah,
I was just thinking like how that's another one where I don't feel like we've had too many Invisible Man movies. I don't think that genre is caught off quite as much as some of the other ones. The
yeah. I
big
think the most recent one was Lee Winnell's Invisible Man.
Yeah, we had one recently. I know that did pretty well. I didn't see it, but I know that did fairly well. And then Hollow Man was a big
Yeah,
one.
I'm a bigger fan of Hollow Man. That's one that I'll defend to this day. Like I love that movie, but the Lee Winnell Invisible Man that one bothered me a little bit because they changed one specific aspect in the movie, and then that just kind of that I just don't like that aspect that they decided to change.
Yeah, that looked like more like a thriller than a horror, but I didn't see it, so I don't know. But Hollow Man definitely was horror. I mean, he kills people pretty horrifically sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah, and he's just a total creepster. Which I'm like, yeah, I get it. If you're a guy and you turn invisible, like, what's the first thing you're gonna do? Yeah, you're gonna go
yeah. He starts. Yeah, there's a lot of creepy, kind of rapey vibes with that movie.
creep on women if they can't see you. That's what we do as men, I suppose, if we had that power. Unfortunately. But yeah. Yeah, then we get The Bride of Frankenstein, 1935, which has the iconic bride with the big hair with the, I think, the white streak. And
Yeah.
um, I haven't seen that one, so I don't know much about that one, except it's pretty popular. I've heard that's even better than the first
Yeah,
Frankenstein.
a lot of people I have seen, like my wife likes that one better than the original Frankenstein. I don't. I like the regular original Frankenstein better, but I know why a lot of people like The Bride of Frankenstein. Plus, it's one of those first movies that was kind of almost fourth wall breaking, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, so you got that one in 1935. Then we start going off in the sequel, kind of like Bride of Frankenstein. It's funny. Uh, and I haven't seen any of these, so I'm kind of curious what these are like. But you got the Son of Frankenstein, 1939. So I don't know what that's about, but um, then we get the Wolf Man. The first time we get and this is Lon Chaney Jr.
Yep.
Um, and that's what I'm interested in seeing because to me, Wolfman to me is a scary character. Like I think that's the scariest character that
Yeah.
in this classic horror, in my opinion. I don't know what you think.
For scare factor, I could see like for me, I've always liked Lawrence Talbert's character and found him more as like a tragic character. So I've
Mm,
never been really scared of the Wolfman. For me, in terms of threat level, I've always been more scared of probably Dracula just as a whole, I think. But yeah, the Wolfman, I can see why people would be. But I've always seen Talbot's character as more of a character to sympathize with or empathize with because of his tragic story.
yeah, and Wolfman, that's another one where we get a lot. We get these all the time. I think Dracula and Wolfman, I feel like are the two that we'll still get today because it's just the concept is just very scary to me. Um, Now we get the Wolfman, and then uh, like I said, they made a lot of these in this era. We get the teenage wolf, and later on, uh, and I remember we had like a Jack Nicholson back in the maybe that was '90s or 2000. I don't
Yeah,
know.
the early '90s. Yeah, that was just Wolf. Yeah, I remember that one. That one also had a James Spader. James Spader was in that movie too.
Okay. Yeah, I remember Jack Nicholson doing one, and then I feel like recently Benicio del Toro did one.
Yeah,
Um,
2010. Yeah, that was Benicio. Yep.
yeah, so it's still a character I feel like we still do today. Or you got the American Werewolf in London was very popular in the '80s. I want to say, um, So I feel like that's a character that can always come back, and you can always do something scary with that character, I guess. Uh,
Yeah, that's a really good story. Just because I think as humans, we've always had problems with dealing with our primal natures, and that's kind of what the Wolfman taps into is like that more primal nature of humans. Where we come from is like back in the day.
yeah. Uh, I was gonna say I can't remember, but oh, the big thing about the wolf man, whatever. Oh, we even got a Disney movie about a werewolf. In fact, just recently on Disney Plus. So very popular character. The big thing is the transformation, is the way he transforms into. That's the most interesting part. Maybe is a because it's kind of horrific idea of like a human being transforming into the wolf. So that's always like a kind of cool feature, I think, of the character.
Oh yeah, that's one. Like I remember back in the day, like that was a big deal because Lawrence, Lon Chaney Jr. He had to go back and forth and get the makeup done, so they'd have to do layers, then shoot a scene again, then do another layer, shoot the same scene. It's kind of almost like stop motion animation a little bit.
Yeah, Mark says Wolfman is cool, not scary. Okay, but I like those early. Yeah, that's why I like the transformation scenes. Kind of interesting. Exactly, Robert. Lots of metaphor in Wolf of Tales. Yeah.
Yeah,
Very-
like what is it? Monster Squad. Wolfman's got nards.
Monster Squad. Yeah, he's a bit of a tragic character in that one as well. He doesn't want to turn into a Wolfman, and he's trying to warn people. Like,
Yeah,
like I think in that movie, he's like, "Walk me up, get me, all this,
yeah.
But
You
like,
see him in the jail, and he's yelling at the cops. He's like, "Oh, put me in, lock me up."
you're just crazy," and it's like, no, he's serious. Um, I think we see like and we talk about famous or actors. I think you'd say the 30s. It's Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff. Those are your big ones. But then I think Lon Chaney Jr. really takes over as like the horror icon this
Yeah.
kid, because he does a lot of horror movies at this time. So I gotta give a lot of credit to Lon Chaney Jr. I haven't seen his movies, so I can't say a lot, but from what I read, it seems like he was a pretty big deal. Um, yeah, and then here's the interesting thing, I think, is that we get a lot of meetups, which I didn't realize.
Mhm.
Uh, Kind of interesting how these all work out. But we got Frankenstein meets Wolfman in 1943. So it almost feels like this is the MCU before the MCU. like
It really
MCU,
was, yeah.
like MCU or the Marvel Cinematic Universe wasn't the first ones to have movies of different characters and then blend them together. We had it all the way here. I thought that was interesting in the 40s with the Universal monsters. So I'm curious how that all works out. But yeah, we got Frankenstein, it's a Wolfman here. We got the House of
House of Frankenstein. Yep.
Frankenstein you've talked about, I know, on your channel. Yeah, House of Frankenstein, 1944. Which you say, yeah, meshes up different characters, right?
Yeah, that one has we have the Hunchback in there, a mad scientist, Frankenstein's monster, and the Wolfman and Dracula all in the same movie.
So I'm interested in hearing that. Yeah, I have to watch that one for sure. Mark
The
says launch.
actor for the actor for Dracula though is different in that one. It's John Carradine, so it's
Oh, okay.
David's father, David Carradine's father.
Mark says Lon Chaney Jr. was the only actor who played all the classic horror monsters. So yeah, he was very prolific, I think, during his era. I think Mark's pretty well known on these old horror movies as well,
Nice.
on his channel. Uh, and then we get these weird ones: Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, and Abbott and Costello meet the Mummy. It's like
Yeah.
so these are, I guess these are comedies with the horror monsters,
Yeah.
but they're considered part of the Universal Monster movie, I guess, franchise. So,
Yeah,
uh,
because Bella's in one of them. Yeah, I think Bella Lugosi's in one of them. Yeah. Mhm.
and maybe Boris Karloff. I don't know if he's in the Mummy one or not, but yeah, they got them to come back, I think, for those. Yeah, then maybe the last classic horror creature is the creature from Black Lagoon. Comes out in 1954, so it comes out a little bit later than the other class. This is kind of a little bit of a later entry into the, like I said, kind of the last. I suppose you have to say the classics are Dracula, Frankenstein, Mummy, Invisible
And
Man,
Wolf.
Wolfman, and the creature from Black Lagoon. I don't know what do you call that creature. Just the
He's like, oh, the Gill Man. That's the term that they use for the character design. Yeah.
I suppose so. Those are your six classic monsters that we kind of started the horror genre. I suppose you'd have to look at. Um, Interesting enough. And I know you saw that movie. I haven't seen that one. The interesting thing about the creature is like we kind of seen we don't see movies of this guy necessarily, the Gillman, except Guillermo del Toro has kind of brought him back in a sense in some of his movies, like the Hellboy movies. There's a character that looks kind of like the
Yeah,
Gillman,
Abe Sapien. Yeah.
and yeah, and then in The Shape of Water, it looks like kind of like the Gillman is the main character. Well,
Yeah,
uh,
That's one I think if James Wan, I heard he's trying to remake Creature from the Black Lagoon, and if he does, I kind of want him to go to Guillermo's team to do the special effects and the visual effects. Like I hope he calls Guillermo del Toro to ask him how he did the effects for all the other guys.
I just saw that. I think they're making a new. You know, it's funny. I was just like looking up stuff, and I swear I saw Guillermo del Toro was making like a new Mummy movie or something like that. I don't know if
Yeah,
you heard.
I know he's getting involved in new projects because I know Lee Winnell did the Wolfman. That's coming out this year. But
Okay.
the only thing I heard about Creature was that James Wan was going to be involved in it. But I haven't heard too much about the Mummy yet.
Yeah, I just kind of just came across it. I was like, oh, okay. I was like,
Nice.
no one's gonna be happy about this. We're getting that Mummy. Or I'm but
I think they're taking over. Like I think over the next 10 years, it's going to be the big thing of the horror community. Is that vampires, wolves, mummies, all that kind of stuff's going to kind of pop up again.
yeah. Or maybe it was Dracula. I can't remember. I might be wrong. It might have been Dracula. He was doing anyway. He's making one of those horror classics. But uh, yeah. Then we get like the Invisible Man Returns, Son of Dracula. Like everything's Son of, Bride of, House of. That seems to be because we get the House of Dracula as well. It's kind of towards the end. But that's kind of the end of the. That's not all of them. Those are the ones I wrote down. It's kind of the Universal Monster kind of era. Mark has something interesting here. I'd be interested in. He has autographs from all the actors from The Creature from Black Lagoon, including the two actors that played the Gill Man.
Nice. Yeah, that's famous too. Because yeah, he had two actors. There's a land actor and a water actor.
That makes sense.
Mhm.
Uh, I know that famous scene of like the woman, like I think she's like swimming. The Gillman's like swimming underneath her. I think that's like the famous.
Yeah, he's like kind of mimicking her and like
Yeah.
swimming at the same pace. Mhm.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's the Universal Monster. I don't know if you have more to say about like what do you think this impacted the horror genre?
No, yeah, you summed it up really good. It was nice, going through that era. Like I said, very influential, the granddaddies of a lot of the horror movies that are coming out now.
Yeah, I was thinking like if I was putting like the Mount Rushmore of horror characters, I guess to me it'd be like I put like Dracula, probably Frankenstein, the Wolfman, the Mummy, maybe I don't know. Uh, those are like to me the big classics. Um, yeah, thanks, Mike. This is the game. I said, Mike, we met because of you, so I appreciate
Yeah,
we got
Huey.
to detox, and now here we are, 2 years later. All right, Mark's up to you, Robert.
Thank you, thank you. Mhm.
Good. Okay, in the next era, I call the Hammer film era. I don't know how familiar with this era. I'm not familiar with it, but I've heard of the name Hammer horror movies. And this is, I guess, looks like in the 50s era.
Yeah, this was more like kind of the Technicolor era, Christopher Lee's Dracula, stuff like that.
Yeah, we get this is the ones I wrote down. You get The Curse of Frankenstein. We get a Dracula movie in 1958. The Thing from Another World in 1951. The Mummy, another Mummy came out during this time period, and The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. So now we're getting a lot of curse. The curse of this, the curse of that. Those are the ones I wrote down. It's kind of some of the major films, I guess, from this period from one of my research. Again, I don't know much about it except it's again the classic Universal monsters, but I'm guessing maybe amped up a little bit.
Yeah, these are more, just like I said, color. There's more experimentation with a lot of the elements of filming and stuff like that this time.
Yeah, color. You're right. So we're getting more colored. The other ones were black and white, the old 30s and 40s, I guess. Um, yeah, hand films are excellent. All right. uh, yeah, the big thing is Christopher Lee. Like I said, he played Dracula 10 times, which is kind of crazy because you think Christopher Lee is like, Lord of the Rings and
Star Wars, Count
Star
Dooku.
Wars. Yeah, he's kind of made a name for himself later on. He's also was in a James Bond movie, Man with the Golden Gun, as well, which I actually quite like that movie in the '70s era. Uh, he did a good villain in that movie as well. But it's funny, Christopher Lee. After I always forget, he got his start really in the horror genre. He's most well known for playing. In fact, I would say like I said, like it felt like you went from like Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff, and then the baton kind of got tossed to Lon Chaney Jr., and then now it's getting tossed to Christopher Lee. It seems to be the face of horror at this time
Yeah.
period.
Yeah, he was really famous too because I guess he had one of the biggest collections of occult books and like satanic books. He had like a huge like library and collection of a bunch of books and really believed in a lot of this horror stuff. So I think in terms of the horror community, he's a very popular figure and character too because I think he was one of those first people that kind of involved it as like a lifestyle. You know what I mean? He liked playing the character and he was involved in knowing all the stuff that has to go along with horror and everything.
Yeah, are you very familiar with these Hammer film
These
era?
ones I don't know as much about. I've actually seen more of the Universal monster movies than the Hammer films.
Okay, yeah. So I guess yeah. I had to mention there. I don't know a lot about it, unfortunately, to say, but I'm sure obviously it was a big influence on the horror community at that time period. Um, Mike has some questions, but
Nice. Mm.
um, what's your favorite horror movie of the modern era, Jason? Yes. Yeah. I, I was going to get to this later. I don't know. I can answer it now, I guess, if you want.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mhm.
I really like It. It Chapter One, I think, is a really good movie, actually. uh,
Nice.
you might be surprised. You're like, wow, really that one? I thought it was a really. I mean, obviously, I read the book too, Stephen King's book, which is like 1,000 pages. It's a huge book, and I'm glad I watched the movie first and then read the book because reading the book it's very confusing because they switch from timelines
Yeah.
to kids and to when they're adults, and so it gets very confusing when you read the book and you're like what's going on, what time period? Because I don't know, he doesn't make it very clear to me like what time period we're in or who we're talking about, and
Yeah.
so yeah, I kind of knew the story because I watched the movies first. But I thought that was a really well done movie, and obviously like I said, it's the biggest, highest grossing movie in the horror genre of all time. Pennywise, I think, is a great horror villain. It's probably my favorite horror villain. I think he's just it's horrifying, but he's really fun at the same time.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, he's a
you
charismatic character, but yeah, when you think about it, it's terrifying. Like if you were to come across him, yeah, you're like, damn.
yeah. Uh, what's I like about him is that he can be anywhere at any time. It's just like it's just so it's such an unpredictable character. Like he can show up as Pennywise. He can show up as another character. It's like you're never safe no matter where you are. Uh, yeah, and I don't know. I just the performance I thought was really good, but I think the overall story and the sadness of losing somebody, I think they do a really good job of making you really feel for those characters that lost a loved one and the grief that they have, and then gosh, I mean, not to get too much spoilers, but man, when Pennywise turns into Georgie and Billy has to kill him. Oh my gosh, it's like,
I got
what?
you. You're like, yeah.
It's like it's not Billy or it's not Georgie, but it's like how could you point a weapon at your little brother, But and the whole last scene is good. But yeah, chapter two I think is okay. It's just a little long,
It's a
um,
little, yeah, overstuffed. Yeah, it's a little overstuffed. Mm.
but I think it's still got some good stuff in that one as well. But yeah, that'd be my favorite modern. And Norin, have you seen Terrifier 3?
No, I
That's
haven't seen it yet. No, yeah, we decided to go see. Me and my wife went to go see Joker 2 first. We were gonna do a double feature, but if we did the double feature thing, I literally would have had like zero sleep, and I would have been here like in front of you probably with like no sleep. I would have been a zombie today.
um yeah, that's the big movie everybody's talking about right now is Terrifier 3.
Yeah, Damien Leon's really trying to push the limits in terms of what you could put on screen,
That sounds
and
like
yeah.
the thing I'm hearing is it's pretty horrific. Yeah, it chapter one, really good pick. Thank you. Jason doing a horror stream. I know, it's crazy, isn't it? I feel like maybe a blue moon outside. Yeah. No, I think it's interesting to delve into it, and it's an interesting subject matter. Uh, and look, I got Norin here, so he can help me out. Um, yeah. So now we get into we get into the '60s era, and there's a couple of things to talk about in the '60s. I think. Um, First, I want to say '50s, '60s era. I'm interested in your thought on Alfred Hitchcock and his influence on the horror genre.
So Alfred Hitchcock, I would say for me, is the first kind of major director that I think of when I think of, like I said, influential to taking thriller and horror to a new level when it comes to using music, cinematography, and also just like kind of facial expressions of characters to kind of get certain points across in your film. And I think Alfred does it very well. Like I said, playing with that tension. Kind of a modern director, I would say that's kind of for me like a modern Alfred Hitchcock is like Ty West.
Yeah.
If you watch a lot of Ty West films, he pulls from Alfred Hitchcock a lot. Even in the new film Maxine, the Psycho House makes an appearance in that movie. Like you see the set, yeah, you get to see the set that they actually had for the movie, so it's really cool. So I think in terms of directors, yeah, Alfred Hitchcock was the first one who kind of put his stamp, like his mark. He was like, "Oh, people are gonna know me. Like I was here, and this is what I'm gonna do."
Yeah, I mean, again, Alfred Hitchcock, you think more thriller, but a couple of movies really, I think, influenced the horror genre. I think the big one is Psycho in 1960. To me, is maybe the biggest kind of horror type movie that he did. Um, and I'm like you said, I would guess that a lot of horror directors today probably, are influenced by what he did in that movie. I would guess, if you ask the director, he'd probably say, "Yeah, I love Psycho, and you
Yeah,
know, and I got a lot of ideas from watching that." I mean, Mike, he saw it for the first time this last week. Did a watch along, and he seemed to enjoy it. So I was happy because I really like that movie. Psycho is my favorite Hitchcock movie. Uh, yeah, it's one of my favorite movies.
nice.
Um, yeah, and I think the whole. I mean, I'm guessing this is the first time maybe we get introduced to this type of character in the horror genre, which is this kind of schizophrenic type. Looks like a normal guy, seems like a nice guy, but then he's actually a
Yeah.
serial.
Yeah,
And
Norman Bates is a good character, like you said, a good character, and Perkins was a great actor.
oh, great performance! I thought it should have been nominated for an Oscar. I thought it was such because when I watch it, I get creeped out because he seems like such a nice guy. And then he says stuff like, a mother's boy's best friend is his mother, and I'm like, oh, that's not right. Like, or we all get mad sometimes, and I'm like, oh man, that's a red flag.
Yeah,
There's that he says, and I'm like, okay, this guy doesn't seem totally there. Uh, and we get ideas of like, to me, I would guess this is the first time we get like multiple personality kind of ideas. Character that has multiple personalities, him and his mother. I'm not sorry to spoil the movie, but
yeah,
him and his mother kind of personalities. Also, there's cross dressing, which is probably pretty new in 1960. You don't get a lot of people cross dressing as much, and also has a good twist. I don't know if we've had that good of a twist before, and I won't say what the twist is, but even Mike watching it, he thought the twist was pretty good. And I think the twist at the end is great. Like when you get
yeah.
a story of what's going on. I think to me, I would guess that's again horror genre is good with twists, probably. And psycho characters. Like I said before, the universal monsters are just these monsters. This guy's not a monster. He's just he's got a mental problem.
Yeah.
and we're and I'm guessing I'm just not I can't think of anything top of my mind. I'm sure we have characters like that today in horror. Just American Psycho, I suppose you can look at maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, Christian Bale. Yeah, that's a pretty wild one. Yeah, in terms of characters that are like, you know, they're villains, but also there's kind of a method to their madness or a reason, kind of like behind why they're the way they are.
I mean, I feel like even the new Joker movies have that in them.
Yeah.
Just mentally ill
Hmm.
turns into kind of a killer. Anyways, but yeah. I don't know. I think you call this like psychological horror, maybe, or something. I don't know if there's a term for this kind of horror, but uh, yeah, very tense. And I venture to say this is when I was, and I said this when we are doing the watch along with Mike, but I may be wrong, but I feel like this is maybe the beginning of jump scares in movies. I don't know if, again, maybe they did the Hammer horror. I don't feel like the classic horror. Maybe it's in the classic. I don't really see jump scares necessarily.
It was
Uh,
more about atmosphere. Yeah, those movies, it's like you said, that gothic atmosphere. It was more about like the setting and the mood and stuff like that. Psycho was kind of, yeah, the one that was, we're here to like scare you. We're here to jump you out of your seat and pull you in, kind of thing.
yeah, I mean, obviously the shower scene is shocking. I mean, it's just a shocking scene. She's showering. You see this silhouette of this person with a knife, and pulls it back, and then ring, and the music really helps. So the ring,
Oh
ring,
yeah,
ring, and then you get these close-ups of him. He's not really stabbing her, but you just see the knife moving, and you see her
yeah. You
sitting.
never see any penetration. Yeah, that's what's kind of crazy. It's like the way that Alfred Hitchcock does it and films the movie.
Oh, it's
And there's no real gore or penetration. Like I think the only blood you see is her blood trickling into the drain. That's the only time you see it.
oh, but you get this. Oh, I mean, it's so great. Her slowly sliding down the wall. Oh, it's so great. And then we have a close up of the eye, and we pull back from her dead face. Oh, so good. Some great kind of horror there. But you also get the scene. It's actually probably the scene that gets me the most. Actually, is there's a scene of this private investigator. He goes up the stairs to the house, and he's like trying to look for the mother. And we get this overhead shot. The camera's overhead, so we just see the tops of them, and he's walking, and there's a door that's open, and the killer, I'll just say who the killer, whatever, jumps out with a knife and stabs him. And to me, that was like a jump scare, like not a terrible jump scare, but when I first saw that movie, I was like, oh my god, like I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
And, and it was so cool because it was overhead, so you saw it from the overhead. I thought it was a really cool shot, for me personally. And then the very last scene when we find out, what happened to the mother, and
Yeah.
and the chair turns around like that. Anyways, I'm just making guesses though. To me, that was like those are the first like legitimate like maybe jump scares we've seen in movies, but because that's a big thing in horror movies, jump scares. I mean, you watch any horror movie, you get the bump, the loud noise, and something jumps out.
Yeah, that's why I like it when they play with it a little better, like certain things. James Wan did it real good in Conjuring when they did the clap game. They made the clapping game like this, and the new house, and the kids are running around, and they're like, "Oh, we'll hide in a room," and then you clap, and then you have to go find them and stuff like that. And there's a really good use of that in the movie and stuff, and you see the ghosts.
Yeah, really cool. Yeah, I mean, and you got like after Hitchcock, Psycho's a big one to me. I mean, Rear Window kind of has it's more of a thriller, but you got that kind of horror element
Yeah,
of uh, he can't move because he can't walk, and thinks someone got murdered across in the building. And the birds is a big one. You're getting attacked by birds all of a sudden. That's kind of I think
yeah,
that's kind of one of the big horror after Hitchcock. But yeah, after Hitchcock, I think he's obviously he's a Godfather of thriller or Godfather of suspense or something like that. I mean,
yeah.
yeah, he was the guy back in this time period, 50s, 60s time period. I think one of the most influential, directors in the horror genre, I would guess. Um, Obviously. Um, Also, I think you have to look at one of the most significant writers that influenced horror genre actually is Edgar Allan Poe. I think needs to be talked about. I don't know how familiar you are with Edgar Allan Poe, but he
Yeah,
has
I've read some of his stuff. Like I would say the Telltale Heart. That's probably like the one that I remember the most.
that's my favorite, The Telltale Heart. I was going to tell you.
Yeah, yeah, that's the one I remember the most. Actually, yeah,
I love that story. The guy murdered somebody and puts him in the floor bed, right under the floor.
yeah. And then he hears them like constantly, like the heart beating and stuff like that.
Even though the guy's dead, but in his mind, he's going crazy. He's like kind of,
Yeah, it's
and
kind of like it just eats at you. It's like your conscience is just like it eats at you. You know what I mean? You did something wrong.
yeah, it's a great story. But yeah, Edgar Allan Poe is like to me one of the most influential horror kind of style writers uh, that we still talk about today, or still do movies kind of based on his work. I don't know if you have any thoughts on his influence or.
His definitely a lot of his books, like I said, if you read his books, he's great at gothic atmosphere and, like you said, tragedy, like just writing really good tragic stories. Like, sometimes people don't want to take that journey, but sometimes it's cool to read, like, it's going to go the opposite, like worst way. Like you just know, and you kind of want to see that journey take place.
Worst way.
Mhm.
I yeah, it's funny. I used to like to I like to read Edgar Allan Poe. I think he's a very interesting writer. A lot of stories. But we get some in the '60s. We get some Edgar Allan Poe horror movies. The House of Usher in 1960, The Pit and the Pendulum in 1961, which is another one of his most famous stories, probably. The Tales of Terror in 1962, and we also get The Raven 1963, which I think The Raven is probably his most popular. Uh, I don't know.
Story,
It's
yeah.
not really a story; it's like a poem, I guess.
Yeah, like a
Uh,
short, yeah, poem, yeah.
yeah, that's one we read, of course, in school, and like it's a really great written. The Nevermore, the quote the Raven, Nevermore. It's very famous, and
Mhm.
yeah, and it's been done so many times. Simpsons did a really good version of it, in fact. uh, Bart Simpson being Edgar Allan Poe, but I don't know how you turn that to a horror movie, but evidently they made a horror movie in 1963, so I'd be interested in what the story is. But like I said, I think we have to. I don't know what your thoughts on. Like I said, it seems like there's a new face of horror. To me, 1960s, Vincent Price. I don't know if you're familiar with Vincent
Oh
Price, but
yeah, Vincent's great. Yeah, Vincent's fabulous because many reasons. Like he's really, positive with the LGBT plus community. You know what I mean? All that kind of stuff. But also the fact that he transcended horror. Like, you know what I mean? Like he pushed into other mediums. Movies, television, music. You know what I mean? You can hear Vincent Price's voice in Michael Jackson in the Michael Jackson song.
that's
Michael
right.
Jackson's famous, you know what I mean? And a lot of people they'll know that song, but they're like, "Oh, who's that voice?" So that's Vincent, you know.
Yeah, it's funny because Vincent Price was like just he was a you know, accomplished, theater actor guy, whatever, he didn't set out to be like a horror icon. He was just, a regular, drama actor. And then he just kind of fell into this like horror and kind of became his thing, I think, which I thought was interesting. He played into that. I think when he found out that that was kind of, where he got popular, he just started doing a lot of horror
Yep.
type. And the voice is iconic. He has a great voice. His whole look, he has the kind of, I think the thin pencil, whatever mustache usually, and
His
uh,
eyebrows are very expressive. He's got these very thin eyebrows, but like he did
yeah,
the Rock thing before the Rock. He was doing the eyebrow.
yeah, eyebrow, yeah. But yeah, he was in a lot of these in the '60s. I feel like he did a lot of B level horror movies. He did a lot of cheap horror movies as well. He was in a lot of stuff. He was just so you think of him just he was a good actor. I think like he was in Ben Hur, or I mean he was in the Ten Commandments. He was in an old movie called Laura, which was kind of a cool suspense movie. So I mean he's
Nice.
a good actor, but then he kind of hams it up for these these horror movies. He's kind
Yeah.
of just kind of ham actor, but he did a really good job, like I said, and I think you have to give a lot of credit to him in the horror genre. Um, that
Yeah,
being,
House on Haunted Hill was a really good one. That's
yeah,
like call back to one of his original like old school ones. Yeah, House on Haunted Hill was great, and then he did
yeah,
even like said modern day stuff. He was it Edward Scissorhands. He was Edward Scissorhands' dad.
dad or the creator, yeah, Edward, that's right, yeah, yeah. So he did a lot of stuff in that era. Um, yeah, then we get into when we get to the late '60s, I think things start changing in the horror genre. The big thing is that everything's family friendly since I mean we have the Hayes Code, whatever, and so there's certain rules like you can't say this, you can't have there's no blood. Obviously, interesting. We watch these horror movies and there's no blood, of course, because you can't have blood really, except for Psycho. Like I said, I guess there was some kind of you did see some blood in the drain, whatever. Uh, yeah, I still don't know how Psycho got made. I'm still shocked. Like 1960. I
Yeah.
can't bet that was shocking if you're like, hey, let's take the family to the movie. And like, oh my God, like, didn't expect that, so, but when in the late '60s, I don't know quite understand, but there's a change in the movie industry where we start getting rated R style movies are starting to come into play. And we're starting to be able to push the genres, different genres, and what we can do now. Because before it's like you had all these rules, and it felt like all the rules kind of got thrown out.
Yeah.
And so we get some pretty iconic horror movies. The big one too I put down was Rosemary's Baby in
Yep.
1968 by Roman Polanski. Uh, all about this girl gets pregnant and it's like Satan or something.
Yeah, it's a really good one. That one I like. I like that better than The Exorcist. I know a lot of people they'd be like, "Oh, that's blasphemy" and stuff like that. But The Exorcist is one that kind of I have like a weird relationship with that movie where I like it, but I don't love it. But Rosemary's Baby, I love. That's one of those movies that's like tension, just like it gets you on the edge of your seat, and like the performance by Pharaoh, like for real, that took me into the movie, and like I said, Polanski's direction. So that's one that I was quite surprised too, because the first time I watched it was last year. Me and Mike covered it for the YouTube channels, and that was the first time I'd ever seen it. So I was a little nervous about going to it, but that's one that I would put that on a pedestal, definitely.
Yeah, it's very popular. I see a lot of people put that up. I did. I have seen that movie. I'm not a fan personally, but
You're not a fan, yeah.
movies that deal with Satan, I'm not a fan of. I guess.
Yeah, it's a touchy subject for you. You're like, oh, it depends on how they tackle it.
Yeah, as a Christian, I'm like, I don't. Satan's yeah.
Yeah.
To me, Satan's real, and so he's a really scary individual, spirit.
Yeah.
Anything to do with Satan or demons, like, because in my opinion, I think they're real. So I'm like, oh god. Like, uh, he says Dr. Phibe's movies with Vincent Price was good. So
Yeah,
been a,
that one's trippy. That's a pretty cool revenge movie.
I was like, yeah, I don't know that one, but yeah, evidently, I don't know if that's a franchise that he did. Um, but I feel like this does give a it kind of starts this whole what I call I don't know what do you call it, demon possession, demon horror style.
More,
Which
yeah, biblical horror, like kind of just like us being obsessed with like the biblical stuff, being kind of afraid of what is like into the future. You know what I mean? What do they say? But then also taking, like you said, demonology and like witches and kind of making that more modern, more known.
yeah, I feel like that was a genre that kind of started with I don't know if it starts with Rosemary Baby, but definitely kind of no pun intended, but gives birth to kind of the
Yeah,
style genre of dealing with Satan and demons and stuff like that. Get very popular. Even today, we get a lot of these style movies. I think, and they're scary. Like the idea of demon possession and so forth is to me is scary.
yeah, because we had the first Omen came out, which I've seen that one. But then Sydney Sweeney did one called Immaculate, which I haven't seen yet, but I've heard some pretty good things about that one.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and we'll I guess I'll get an Exorcist here in a second, I guess, but yeah, so that's a big one. The other really significant one to me is the Night of the Living Dead in 1968, which
Nice.
starts the whole zombie horror, which is a huge genre in the horror movies.
That's one of my favorites. Yeah, George A. Romero is kind of like you said. You would think of him as the godfather of modern adaptations of zombies. Because before this, the zombie thing was more of a kind of mind control thing, more of like a slave labor, mind control labor type thing that they used back in the day. Like White Zombie is a good example of that. That's a completely different take on what zombies were. And then George A. Romero came in and he's like, well, I'm going to make them flesh eaters. And it's going to be more about kind of like our fear of, the afterlife, but also the fear of what nuclear stuff does to, the ground and the bodies and why they'd be coming back to life and stuff.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I haven't seen the movie, so I can't say a lot except that I'm guessing
Oh, yeah.
introduced the whole idea of like the dead coming to life, and yeah, and something I believe I've seen some clips, and they don't really look like zombies. They haven't really perfected the way zombies look yet.
Yeah.
If I, um,
I think
But
you could do Night of the Living Dead. Like that one's not that bad at all. Like it in terms of gore and stuff. Like, and then once you understand like all the stuff they're eating is just like fried chicken and it's food, and so you can tell when you're looking at it. You're like, oh well, that's just like that's a piece of chicken or that's ham, and they're just munching down on it.
but I'm guessing it interests the idea of these slow moving zombies. They're slow moving and they eat you and they kind of overpower you with numbers, kind of thing. But they're not hard to defeat. Like you can push them and like run and,
Yeah.
and but if you get overwhelmed by a bunch of them, then you're dead.
Yeah,
Kind
I
of thing.
think Night of the Living Dead, the main horror about that one is kind of the social commentary. A
Okay.
lot of the stuff that George A. Romero was trying to talk about in terms of like the white culture and black culture and stuff like that and everything, and women and men also too. He tackles a lot of social commentary just in one little house where he has all these characters, and they're being trapped in this house because they're surrounded by zombies. And that one for me calls close to home because that was the first black and white film that I remember watching. That I remember watching and actually sitting down, understanding it, remembering it. It was Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, I hear a lot about this movie's like obviously very influential into the horror genre and people go back
Hmm.
and what do like and I would say zombies maybe the most popular horror genre. I may be wrong, but it's definitely up there.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's one of those. Yeah, especially when Walking Dead came out, it kind of tailed off a little bit because it got oversaturated. But I think now people are kind of comfortable with going to zombies again. It got oversaturated for a little bit there.
yeah, I almost felt like it made a comeback in the 2000s with Walking Dead and Zombieland was really popular and we started getting more zombie movies. It felt like and zombie TV shows and yeah, it just seemed to be to me like the one that everybody really and I kind of to be honest, I like the zombie genre. I think it's an
Yeah,
interesting genre. And what I find interesting about it, what I like about the zombie genre is that when if the idea that there's a zombie, it's kind of like it's a pandemic, like it's a zombie outbreak. It's like this, all of a sudden, you start growing. You go from one to two to three. All of a sudden, you got 1,000. They spread really quickly. It's like a disease that just spreads. And not only do you have to, and the thing that happens is there's no more law and order. That's what I find interesting, I guess, about the movies. It's like you have to kind of the humans that are alive, you have to kind of band up together and form your own group and community. And then you can't trust other human beings. That's what makes it interesting. It's like
yeah,
not only do you not trust the zombies, but now you got other human beings that are trying to take advantage of you because there's no more government basically because you can't have government anymore because it's just a post-apocalyptic world
yeah,
now. And there's no power and there's no running, electricity, water, or whatever. And so now you have to go back to the old days of like just survival,
yeah.
survival. And I find that interesting, I guess, if that makes sense. The zombie that you don't get maybe in other genres, but zombie is a very interesting genre because
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things too about it. It's very nihilistic. Like that's why I like it too. Is like, but it could also be very funny. Like you can do Shaun of the Dead or Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse. So that's why I like the zombie subgenre because you can go the polar opposites. You can go the very extreme nihilistic route, and then you can go the very comedy heavy route.
very true. Like I said, comedy, zombie comedies are popular as well now. All that. I even talked to you one time on a stream, kind of, and I said, "Do you ever think about what would you do?" Like I think about it because I don't know. I watch all
Yeah,
these. I always think, what would I do if a zombie outbreak happened? Where would I go? Who would I? How would I survive? I have no survival skills, so I'm like in trouble because I'm like I got to find somebody that has survival skills. I don't have any guns, so I'm like I got to find someone that has weapons and or
I would definitely be a runner because I'm like the fastest person in my family. So I would definitely be like the runner, like the person like, oh, you got to run and grab the food or grab this and that.
yeah, because you have to think because you have to think about you need food and water. So how do I have food and water? Where do I go to? Because right now I just go to Walmart and buy stuff. But what if you don't have distribute factories or whatever aren't working anymore to
Oh
you
yeah, I
know
told people like if it did happen, like I know it's kind of weird, but like the first places I would raid are like the spices rack section, like in the Walmart, like spices. So think about it, like if you have to cook like kind of weird meat, like think about if you're cooking roadkill or you're cooking just the most random weird meat in the apocalypse, you're gonna want some spices. And another thing,
a good idea.
another thing is, yep, is like I would go for probably. I'm trying to think what another section that would be. Like definitely that, and then probably the seeds. So seeds section where you can grow like tomatoes and lettuce and stuff. So go to like the gardening section and get a bunch of pottery stuff and seeds and everything. That way you're able to grow your own stuff. But then, like you said, you had your own spices as well.
I love this idea. Everybody's like running for the meat section, the whatever. Norin's family's grabbing up the spices and the seeds. That's a good idea. I never thought of that. Yeah, because I think like if it was me, like I would have to go to like a Walmart or something and try to barricade that and try to live off what food before it spoils, I guess, and then I'm dead after that. But I hope like as far as a little bit, maybe if I'm just like in an area where there's food and I can live off the food and water and just barricade myself and
Yeah, yeah. I talked to my coworkers too about it too because I work at a gas station and I work graveyard, so it's just me and one other person, and we work all night by ourselves. And we always talk about like, oh, like what if it happened right now? Like it just apocalypse started happening because our store is pretty set. Like we're pretty good. We have oil there. We have car stuff. We have food stuff, milk, a freezer. Ice, drinks. Like we have a good
yeah.
plethora of stuff at that store that we would be held up for quite a few months. But we'd have to defend it though. That's one thing you have to think about though too is you'd have to defend it from everybody else.
Yeah, like I said, I don't have any weapons in my house really, so I'd have to grab like a steak knife, I guess, and that's my stab him with
Yeah,
it.
I'm not like my family's not big on guns. Like I don't own guns or anything, but I have like nunchucks. I have a pair of Bruce Lee like style nunchucks. I have like oh my god, do you remember Resident Evil Extinction? I don't know if you've seen that one, but the main character, lead character, Alice has like a certain kind of knife weapon that she uses on the zombies. I have a replica of that.
I just love the idea of nunchucks. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the hardest weapon to probably. Bruce Lee would be good at that. Yeah.
Yeah, he would be good. Like in close quarters combat, yeah, he would mess a few zombies up for sure.
Yeah. The only problem with guns is they run out of bullets. That's the only problem. So to me, I always thought if it was me, I would want like a samurai sword because I feel like that's pretty sharp and I can just
Yep.
decapitate them and just go that route. And
I'm always a huge Jason fan, so machete was always a popular pick for me because you could, like
yeah,
you said, you could attack the head, but you could also use it to chop down trees and branches and kind of
yeah.
make a fort or something.
Oh, see, you're thinking smart. You got multiple purpose weapons. And that's a good idea. Anyways, but yeah, that's a little tangent, but I do think about that. Like, what would I do? I don't believe there ever be a zombie outbreak. But it's fun to think about. Like, what do I do? How do I survive? Zombies interesting, but yeah. So when we get to the '70s, like I said, the to me the horror genre totally changes here because man, once horror is like, okay, how do we make this horror without being graphic, without being gory, without showing blood, without showing people actually getting stabbed or whatever, or penetrated in some way. And then now we get into '70s, and it's like, oh, now we can do all that. So now it's like, what? I mean, this is almost like where horror, the modern horror genre really starts. I would think is the '70s period, because you can have blood, you can have gore, you can do gross things you couldn't do before. So I mean, I'm sure anybody that was the directors at this time were like just going wild with imagination of like what we can do now.
Oh yeah, a big one was probably Wes Craven was a big one because I think his first student film he ever did when he came out of school was The Last House on the Left, which was a pretty controversial movie. That was a big one, and I think that was the '70s, and that was kind of almost one of those films that they did to kind of protest the whole rating system thing almost, you know what I mean? So a lot of those films, like you said, they would come out and they'd be performance arts pieces, you know what I mean? Directors and people saying like, "Oh, well, we want to be able to do more in film, so this is what we're trying to say."
I forgot I got a comment here and haven't gone to yet. Keith says The Devil's Reign with Ernest Borgnine is a low budget scary movie with also featured a young John Travolta and William Shatner. So
Nice.
I've heard that one. That's an interesting sound. Devil's Reign. I'm sure there's all these like low budget horror movies. That was a big thing.
Yeah, that's the like I said. The thing is, it's a quick book. Yeah, like you have a like a good 70% to 80% chance that if you make a horror film, you're gonna make your money back and more.
Exactly. I didn't even mention The Blob. The Blob was like a big thing in the 50s as well. The slow
Yeah,
moving.
that was a good one. The remake is really scary. That 80s remake fucked me up.
I saw the remake like on TV, so they cut out all the really horrible stuff.
Yeah.
And it was still like I don't know. I just caught it on TV one time as a kid. I was like, oh, what's this? And I was like, oh my god, this is horrible. And I didn't see the worst stuff.
That movie still messes me up to this day. I watch it. I'm like, I don't
Oh,
remember how old I was. I probably was like 8 or 9 when I watched the 80s one, and I was like, damn, like what the hell's going on with this thing?
what's messed?
Mhm.
But yeah, I forgot to mention that one. That's another kind of classic one as well. But um, yeah, I think the big one to me is The Exorcist is probably the biggest well-known horror movie during this time period. That was, I mean, again, I don't know if it's the first. It's kind of like I said, Rosemary Baby isn't demon possession, but kind of gave this idea about Satan kind of having to deal with that. And then we get
Yeah,
the Exorcist, which really delves into being possessed. And that, like I said, we kind of I guess talked about this already, but that's one of the big genres today. I see tons of possession. I mean, we just got the Pope's Exorcist recently, I think, and another Exorcist movie. And you just talked about Immaculate, whatever.
yeah.
I remember we had this one called The Haunting in Connecticut or something like that, which looked pretty horrifying just watching the trailers to that one.
That one's
uh,
actually, yeah, that's pretty good. That's a good one too. I think if I remember correctly, Kyle Garner's in that one. That's a good
I remember seeing the trailer and just going, no, not for me. Like,
one. No.
oh, I don't like possession movies really. It's just those freak me out. But yeah, so this is definitely a genre that's gonna. I think, like I said, zombie maybe the biggest, but maybe this could be almost the biggest. Yeah, I feel like I see demon possession movies all the time. I mean, trailers. I don't watch
Yeah.
them, but trailers for them all the time. Like,
They're
uh,
very kind of cookie cutter now. Yeah, it's almost like you said, like they have a template now. It's like you got to have
mhm.
the character that you're sympathizing with that's possessed. Then you got to have like your really cool religious pope character that's coming in that's going to save the day, and then you got your parents, your grieving parents, and there's kind of like a template now for kind of how you tackle these movies.
Yeah, and yeah, yeah, and like I said, I mean, at the time, this was horrifying. From what I remember seeing, like, or hearing things like people like passing out in the theater or something like that. Like, it was at the time period, like people had never seen horror movies like this. I don't think so. To me, Exorcist is probably one of the most significant in the horror genre. Um, Biggest influence maybe on the horror genre because it really pushed the limits of what we can do at that time period. I mean, the makeup work was pretty crazy as well. Of
Yeah.
I forget the character, the main
Oh,
character.
Reagan. Yeah, Reagan's character. Yeah, the makeup work for Linda Blair is really good, and then in general, I think just the filming of it. You always hear like a lot of things about how the filming of it was pretty difficult as well.
Yeah, I mean, and you get the whole head turning, real creepy. You get the projectile like green vomit. I think is it's real gross.
Yep.
Uh, and the language pretty terrible too. The things they
Yeah.
made her that young actress had to say this uh, do is I mean yeah it was pretty shocking for that one of the most shocking movies probably for that time. um I've seen the movie. I think it's kind of boring.
You think it's more okay?
I don't get scared or shocked. I'm just like this is boring, like nothing happens until towards the end I
Still
guess.
the end. Yeah,
Yeah,
for me, I've always had a weird relationship with Exorcist because like the first time I watched it, I never liked it that much at all. And then I always found the most horrifying part to be like the scientists testing Linda Blair and Reagan, like when they're doing all the tests and they're trying to figure out. They're like, we don't know what's wrong with her, so we're gonna inject her with everything, and we're gonna give her shock treatment, and we're gonna do this and do that. That to me was always the most horrifying thing because I was like, damn, dude, you're just gonna poke and prod me and all this crap. You don't know what the hell's wrong with me?
Yeah, I mean, the best thing is the musical score is really good.
Definitely, yeah, that's really good too. That is true.
And the scene where the priest come to the house, and I think it tells him to leave or something.
Yeah,
Like, in like just the creepiness of them coming to anyways. Um, it's a creepy movie. I don't find it too scary, but it's definitely got the creep factor. And
yeah,
like I said, got nominated for Best Picture. I mean, that's how big it was. I'm guessing if you were around that time, it's probably people probably that saw it in the theater at the time probably I'd say like it's like one of the greatest movies they've ever seen. I guess for me it's not because I wasn't around at that time. To me, I'm like it's like it's not it's over to me. It's like kind of overrated, but that's just me.
yeah, a little bit. For me, I understand what it did for the genre, but yeah, I think there's films in the same subgenre of horror that have done it better now.
Okay. Yeah, I know you did a thing on The Exorcist at one time. You've seen them all, I think, right?
Yeah, I've seen them. Yeah, I've seen them all. Yeah, my favorite one is the third one. That's my favorite in the franchise, and that is not really that much of a hot take now because I think more people are kind of warming up to the third one. The third one's got George C. Scott in it. It's got Brad Dourif in it. It's got a really good cast.
Is she grown up at that time? There's one where she's kind of more grown up, isn't it?
That was the second one. Yeah, Heretic. So there's Exorcist 2, The Heretic. It has her in it, and then they also brought Linda back for The Believer.
Okay, so then they had different. Okay, I see. Um, I think Exorcist 2 I saw was like one of the worst movies ever made.
Yeah, a lot of people say that. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Like some people, they're like, "Oh, it's not that bad," but no, when you watch it, it's that for me. That one's boring, and that one's severely boring. And there's like a lot of weird shots of locust butts and freaking shots of therapists, filling up Linda Blair. It's weird. It's such a weird movie.
I've heard. Um, the other big one kind of is The Omen, kind of around this genre where it's
Yeah.
I think it's the Antichrist or something like that. I haven't seen it, but I think it's something to do with like they take a baby home and it's the Antichrist and it's
Yeah, so that one's pretty crazy because it's like this politician, like this really famous politician type character guy. Him and his wife are pregnant, and at the hospital, their baby gets switched, and they get the baby that is, like I said, supposed to be the next coming of the Antichrist, and they want him in the position to have a very rich family and a family that's going to be influential. So that's why they give him to the politician type family and stuff like that. And it's kind of just the struggle of the father realizing like, oh, is my son really evil and he's the devil, and do I have to destroy him or kill him? Like, will I be able to? That's kind of the struggle with the movie.
yeah. So I know it's a pretty popular movie in the horror genre as well. One of the most significant ones probably the '70s period. And they made a bunch of sequels to it, I believe, and remakes.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Uh,
think there's four official movies, then there's the remake, and then there's the first Omen, which is now the prequel to the original one.
okay. Yeah, and the original had like Gregory Peck in it, who's like this Oscar-winning actor,
Yeah.
and also had a great score. I think he got nominated for best score at the Oscars. So horror movies actually have pretty good scores. Now I think about it, it's a pretty good genre for scoring.
Yeah, John Carpenter's Halloween. Yeah, there's a lot of good iconic music. Even Harry Manfredini, Friday the 13th score.
Yeah, I think they're all pretty good. I don't like the movies necessarily, but I'm like, the scores are pretty good. Or just the movie score or something. Um, but yeah, so I know the Omen's one of the big ones here. You have to talk about Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I mean, that was kind of the big, very bloody, first big bloody, kind of slasher almost movie. I don't know what do you want to call it.
That was, yeah, or like an OG slasher for sure. That kind of kicked off the genre because this one did come out before John Carpenter's Halloween. And a lot of people, when I talk to most horror fans now, I would say 70% of them, this is the most common answer for either scariest film or their favorite horror film of all time. This is the most common answer that I see.
Yeah, I have to say it's probably the best name for a horror movie I've ever seen before. I love the name Texas Chainsaw. I mean, it tells you everything. It's like they're in Texas. there's somebody with a chainsaw and they kill a bunch of people because that's a massacre or something. Like it just tells you right there, like, okay, I know what I'm getting into this movie.
Yeah.
Uh, but definitely one of the most iconic. I don't know what you call a modern day horror character, Leatherface. To
Yeah.
me, you have to put that on one of the most iconic characters now in the horror genre. I think. What a horrific idea for a character. And Leatherface, great name too. Love that name, Leatherface. But it's this guy that wears, I think, the face of his victims.
Yeah. So he cuts out, yeah, kind of like almost Frankenstein-esque. He uses different skins from different victims and sews them together and then puts it on his face. And at first it's just like a mask he wears, but then it slowly starts to become something that he actually sews to his face to like be cut, like to make it like his face.
Yeah, that's a horrific idea. I mean,
Yeah.
messed up. Whoever came up with that idea, and
Yeah,
and
this is one that's really good. Like I said, Toby Hooper really came out with a just a film that was just yeah part of American like Americana culture at the time, and just yeah like floored everybody with what he did.
yeah, I mean, it's pretty. I mean, I can imagine it's pretty shocking. 1984. I mean, yeah, that's and chainsaw. I mean, oh my gosh, what a weapon to use. To me, that's the scariest weapon. I think is a chainsaw. Like, oh my god, I would not want to be attacked by a chainsaw. Um, and I think it deals with cannibalism as well. I think the family,
Yeah,
right?
that was another thing too. That was part of what like the subtextual nature of it, talking about how at that time a lot of families were getting pushed out of because of the industrial thing and like kind of the assembly line system and stuff. So a lot of families were losing jobs at that time. So
Ah,
that's kind of another kind of commentary on social stuff that was happening at that time.
social commentary. I don't think about that. I guess I just think horrific
Yeah.
killing. And, I mean, and you get this. I don't know if this is the beginning of. I'm just now thinking this off the top of my mind. A big thing in this horror genre is like teenagers or young people going out.
Yeah, young cute people. Yeah, that's a good thing too. Is like you said, that's great that you said that. Is picking a young cast that is not familiar, but also cute. You want them to look cute
Yeah,
because you want to be like, oh no, like let's see. I don't want bad things to happen to them.
no,
This is
right.
not cute young couple, and
Yeah,
then all of a sudden things go absolutely the worst.
it goes the work. It just yeah, it's like they're just minding their own business, and then they're all massacred by this serial killer or whatever. uh, which I'm just now thinking, mine. That's kind of the trope of all the big horror genres. It's just killing kids that are
Yeah, the slasher craze. Yeah, kind of. This is like the beginning because
that's the
for
beginning, yeah.
Americans, we were taking it from the Italians. Italians kind of started it first with the whole giallo thing, and then Americans were like, "Oh, we're gonna take a lot of these elements, but we're gonna tweak them a little bit, throw in a final girl, make the
Yeah,
cast a little bit more sexy, and like
yeah,
higher body count, and we're gonna make it a slasher film."
yeah, definitely. Yeah, sexy women are definitely like a big thing. uh, watching this, some of the stuff. I haven't seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's one that I haven't gone to. I'm a little afraid of that.
You're afraid of that?
Don't like it.
Yeah, I think that first one is not. The
Freaks me
first
out.
one's not that bad for me. Like I just maybe it's because I've seen so many other horror movies before that, but that's one prime example that I think the remake did everything that original did, but better. Like the remake is like
Really.
turned it up to 11.
Okay. I have to say that's definitely yeah, it's definitely a franchise that's made a bunch of sequels, remakes. Definitely was one that seems like it's going to go on forever. Like it's very popular
Yeah,
uh, franchise, and you're a fan of it. I know you went through the franchise. I think on your channel.
yeah, I
Over,
watched all those ones too. Yeah.
yeah, and it's one of your favorite, or
In terms of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's probably number 6. I think when I ranked my top 10 horror franchises, it was like number 6 or 7.
okay, yeah, I can see that. Um, well, okay. I think we need to talk about Stephen King and his influence because the
Yeah.
'70s really is where we see Stephen King books starting to get adapted.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think, yeah, like I thought about Edgar Allan Poe. Stephen King maybe even more of an influence on the horror genre whole than anybody else. What do you think?
I think Stephen King, it's kind of funny too, because like as a writer, like I haven't really read a lot of his stuff, but I've seen just about every TV show or film adaptation that anybody's ever done of his stuff. And I think what's cool about Stephen King is he's so okay with people touching his properties and doing things with them, which I like that. And it's kind of funny that he has the biggest problem with Stanley Kubrick that did
I,
The Shining. And The Shining is heralded as probably like the greatest horror movie of all time to a lot of people.
it's probably his best adaptation, and they're like, yeah, he.
And like he hates it. Yeah, he can't stand it. But I think it's just because Stanley. I heard I don't know if it's true, but I heard a story that one time Stephen King walked up to Stanley or came up to him and was giving him ideas for the script and was like, "Oh, well, this is what I think you should do." And Stanley like kind of said like, "Nah, I got this. Like, I'm good." And like just was like, I don't need you." So that's why him and Steven have this problem.
It's funny. Kubrick wasn't a horror director. This is the only horror movie he did.
Yeah.
He did all kinds of different, sci-fi and suspense.
Military movies, Full Metal Jacket.
He did a comedy. I mean, he did like every single. It's kind of interesting watching his movies because he didn't make that many, and he didn't stick with one genre. So it's kind of interesting that he did this one horror movie. And it's like considered probably one of the classic horror movies of this period, and probably, maybe the most well-known, almost well-known Stephen King adaptation, probably.
Yeah, I would say this or it. Yeah, it would definitely be this or it, or probably the most popular two.
I would say so. Yeah, and I'll just name some big names here, and you can tell me what you think. First, we got Carrie. Was his first movie that they made in 1976, based off, I think, one of his first books he wrote, maybe as well. The Shining, as you said, huge movie. I guess I didn't write down when that came out, but yeah, Shining came out in the 70s. I wrote down it was made into a TV series later on in the 90s.
Yeah, 1990. Yeah,
like a two-parter, made for TV kind of thing. And then we got the good adaptations here later in 2017 and 18, the most popular adaptations of that, and that one really took off. We got Misery in 1990, Kathy Bates and James Caan. We got The Children of the Corn, which is, to be honest, I haven't seen it, don't know much about it, except there's like creepy kids.
that's one that it's kind of funny because like I talked to people in the horror community, and there's not a lot of people that really like that movie. And I think maybe it's just because I watched it at a certain age. Like I like Children of the Corn. It hit me at this certain age where like I got obsessed with binging franchises. And I remember going to Hollywood Video and just renting Children of the Corn 2, 3, 4, 666. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because that was one of them. One of them was like 666 or something. Was like the name of it. So, yeah, Isaac's Back, like all this crap. So, yeah, I remember watching all of them and stuff. And that's definitely not the greatest franchise at all, but I like that first film.
Yeah, I said it's one that I don't hear a lot about, but yeah, they made a bunch of them, evidently. Pet Cemetery, which seems to be a popular one as well.
Yeah, that one's pretty creepy. Yeah,
I haven't seen it. And I don't want to because I think I saw like I think I saw one scene of it, and it was horrifying.
If you're not cool with like pets, if you don't like stuff happening to animals and pets, that's probably not your thing. And then also like young children, just because like, the fact of me being a father, like just seeing kids die, like it doesn't bother me that much. But like when I think of it as a father perspective and you're watching the film, you're like, that is very horrifying to have to go through a moment like that.
Yeah, and I know they did a remake not too long ago, but I don't think it did very well. But
yeah, they did the remake, which I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. It was one of those things where it's like they had good ideas, but they just, I think, were too afraid to push the boundaries.
we got Cujo, the killer dog.
Dee Wallace, yeah, Dee Wallace, one of my favorites. She's a cutie. She's in that movie.
Yeah, I think they only made one movie. They haven't really done much with that. But yeah. The Mist, which was like a big movie that came out in the 2000s, maybe.
Yeah, Tom Jane. Yeah, Tom Jane's in that movie.
I didn't see it, but I heard what happens, and it's pretty horrific.
Yeah,
it's makes me want to watch it.
that's probably one of my least favorite endings. I can't stand that ending. That's one of my least favorite endings in a movie.
Oh, the ending sounds terrible. Yeah. uh, you got The Stand. The Stand has never been made into movies. It was made into a show, I think, in the '90s,
I think
and
so. Yeah.
they did a remake of the show a couple years ago as well. And I've only seen a couple episodes of it. That's one I need to go back to, maybe. The Stand, and it's too hard. It's another book that's over 1,000 pages, so it's like impossible to make a movie out of. Uh, Firestarter. I don't know if you heard that one. I think Drew Barrymore.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's pretty good. That's pretty good. I like that first one with Drew Barrymore, but the remake was god awful.
yeah, that's right. Think of that one. I don't know much about that one. Dreamcatcher, I remember, was kind of
Oof,
big.
that's a good one. That's one of the, for me, that's one of the most underrated ones. That's a good cast. That's a really good cast.
Yeah, I know it has to deal with like aliens or something. I don't know. Is that, I don't know if that's
That
real.
was the first one that I remember where I realized that Stephen King has this thing where he writes all his books in the same universe. So I didn't realize that until I watched this movie, and Dreamcatcher tries to tie in elements of it, but also elements of The Shining all get tied into Dreamcatcher. So it's kind of the first movie that made me understand that, oh, Stephen King kind of writes all his books in the same universe. You know what I mean? They take Derry as a place that is represented in the place of The Shining and stuff like that.
Interesting. And then the last one I wrote down is Salem's Lot,
Yeah.
which I heard is pretty popular book, pretty popular. They did a movie back in the day, maybe in the '80s. I don't know.
Yeah, the
Uh,
miniseries that came out. Yeah, it was a miniseries too, kind of like it. And then they did Return to Salem's Lot. They did a remake with Rob Lowe in the early 2000s, and then the new remake just came out this year.
yeah, there's a remake on HBO Max. I haven't watched yet, but it deals with vampires. I know that's all I know about it. But
Yeah, I
uh,
actually quite liked it. I'm not the biggest fan of Salem's Lot. That is one of those vampire films that I think is kind of overrated. But this remake, I was more tailored for me
really,
because I'm not a big fan of the story. So what they did with the remake was they kind of packaged the story for like a smaller audience, and they kind of made it for cinema audiences because that first movie was a TV movie, so it's like over 3 hours, so it's very lengthy.
um, Keith mentions the Tommy Knockers, pretty good TV mini.
Nice.
I watched that, and then that was like in the '90s. I remember that scared me as a kid because I was in the '90s, and again it was on TV, so it wasn't like graphic or anything, but it deals with like aliens, I think, and I don't remember much about that. I remember being kind of scary though.
Excuse me.
Is there so Stephen King? Is there a favorite there that you want to talk about, or anything?
So my favorite Stephen King. I actually think I have it. Hold on, let me go see it. I think I have it on the table right here. So a lot of people that follow my channel, even people that follow your channel, know I work graveyards. This is my favorite Stephen King adaptation right here, The Graveyard Shift. This is based off one of his short stories, so this isn't a full-length story. This is a movie about a graveyard shift crew that works at a kind of cotton plant, like where they make cotton and they pull wool and and all that kind of stuff and everything. And it's very, very hard jobs, a place you don't want to work. And their basement is kind of riddled and infested with rats. So what the boss does is he hires a crew of people, a graveyard shift crew, to go down there and clean up the basement, get rid of everything, and they end up finding out that there's a giant beast down there. So this is a creature feature, and it's really good. Got some cool cast members. The boss in here is a proper a-hole. Like if you've ever had a boss that was just a complete a-hole, it's represented in this movie.
When was that? Is that '70s or?
This is 1991, I think. No, 1990. So same year as It. This came out the same year as It.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah, I don't know that one.
Is a good one. Yeah, I highly recommend this one. I think right now, if you to stream this one, you have to Amazon Prime. I think Prime has this to stream.
um, for me, I have seen Carrie and I have seen The Shining. I think they're actually good horror movies. I kind of enjoy them, even even as a non-horror fan.
Yeah,
Um, Carrie, that the scene. I mean, I still love that scene where they're at the prom and they it's all in slow motion. They're all, oh my god, she's so happy for once, and then
Yeah,
dump the young John Travolta and all, dump the pig's blood on top of her, and just that scene of the blood going down her, and then she starts getting like intense, and then
her face, yeah, Sissy Spacek's face, her reactions, and then like the like the just the music and stuff is like, oh,
and the doors shut, and she's just that's oh man, it's such a great image of her face with blood all over it, and the
yeah,
intensity.
that's probably my second favorite. If I was to pick the top two for me, would be this one and Carrie. Those are probably my two most
Yeah,
watched Stephen King adaptations. I think, yeah,
yeah, I love that scene. That's a scene where I'm like, I don't know, like I'm not a horror guy, but I'm like, oh, that's so good. Like, and then The Shining, I think it's got a lot of good stuff in it. Jack Nicholson, so good. It's the crazy uh, Jack or whatever. I don't know, the crazy the father that the caretaker or whatever. And all work and no play. He makes Jack a
Jack
dull.
and Old Boy, yeah, Torrance, I think was his name. Yeah, his last name was Torrance. I think was his last name in the movie.
Oh man, so good when he gets and yeah, such a great performance. And uh, there was some weird stuff that I don't care for in the movie. I have to admit, I kind of over.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, but you got the. I mean, I love the kid, the POV shot of the kid going down the hallways. That's so cool.
Oh
And then
yeah, I like the design of the carpet and the hallways. Yeah, the design of the carpets and the hallways are pretty interesting.
running into the twins. Come play
Yeah.
with me. Oh, so good. It's like, oh my god.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
probably still to this day one of the most popular like horror convention costumes. When I went to the horror convention last month,
the
there
twins.
was two sisters dressed like the twins. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Oh, it's great. Yeah, it's creepy. It's always funny. Little kids are so creepy in horror movies. I don't know what it is, but little kids and old women are just
Old people, yeah.
in real life, like little twin girls are cute. You know, an old woman is, a nice looking old woman. But then in horror movies, it's like, oh my god, like it's creep
That's
factor.
why that's why the movie that I'm trying to write a movie in the script and I want to get it done and I want it to be a one location thing. So what I want is because I've never really seen a movie done here is a nursing home, and be it that old people are really scary and stuff, and dealing with death in a nursing home is pretty scary too. So I feel
Yeah.
like it's a good setting.
Oh, 100%. I worked at a nursing home for most of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I worked night shift at the hospital. Yeah, it's got some creepy stuff.
Yep.
Creepy thoughts come into my mind sometimes. Yeah. Um, uh, yeah, when all the lights are off.
Yeah, and you hear sounds like for real. You hear sounds and like there's stuff that lingers, like voices, smells, all kinds of stuff lingers. It's trippy.
Oh, I mean, the nurses I work with, they're all convinced there's ghosts. I don't believe.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a ghost, but they really believe there's like a ghost, like in the and the hospital's great because people die in the hospital. So yeah, it's a good setting for like people coming back and haunting you or something. But
Yeah.
I don't think it is. But your mind can play tricks on you. But anyways, um, yeah, and the blood coming out the elevator, such a great scene as well. Um, and then the Jack with the axe through the door, and here's
Here's
Johnny.
Johnny.
Oh, yeah, so there's a lot of good stuff in that movie as well. Those are the two I always think of, Carrie and The Shining. And then It, of course, It, like I just said, it was great. Like
Yeah,
I thought
that one's another big one too. Like you said, because Tim Curry's just excellent. Like he makes that role very very scary.
yeah, Tim Curry's great. And then what's his name? The actor that plays
Skarsgård,
Dick
yeah,
Scar.
Skarsgård. Mhm.
Hello, Georgie, whatever. Ah, so good. It's like, oh my, in the makeup work, so good. But yeah, again, I haven't seen a lot of them. Like I said, Carrie, The Shining, It. I've seen Misery. That movie creeps the heck out of me. That's pretty horrifying from just a psychological point of view, I guess.
Yeah,
The whole idea of it. Um, that might be the only things I've seen of Stephen King, but good stuff there. But yeah, definitely for influential. Um, yeah, so and I guess when you mentioned Aliens, is kind of somewhat horror. It's like sci-fi horror, I guess. It also comes out in the 70s.
yeah,
Uh,
that was a big thing. Yeah, because I remember That's one that still to this day, my mom will talk about how like it was going to the drive-in theater to see that movie. So that's an iconic movie. I think a lot of people remember that first experience with Alien.
I've avoided those movies because they look really gross. I guess the whole coming thing just grosses me out. I don't know.
I like watching them because for me, I love when you have a antagonist like the xenomorph that is completely animalistic. So when you see them have to fight it, it's like straight up survival because you're like, oh well, this entity is trying to kill us and doesn't care about us at all. So you really have to fight for survival in those movies.
Yeah, pretty scary. The xenoforce, the mouth
Yeah.
comes. It's like, oh my god. Like I've been a kid and seen like commercials for it or something. Uh, Again, I was born after the first one, but I guess I was alive when the second one came out. Maybe that's what I saw on TV. I don't know. And I thought it was horrible. I was just a little kid, and I'd never seen a commercial. I'm like, oh my god, like that looks so scary. Those more things. And like Amityville horror, we talked about the biggest franchise starts also in the '70s, which I know nothing about. It's like a haunted house or something, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, that one, the Amityville Horror, that's based off a true story. And apparently, DeFeo, there's a guy named, I think it was Ronnie DeFeo, claims that he lived in this house with his family, and that slowly throughout, like over a few months period, he started hearing voices, and the voices told him to, dispatch his family and stuff, and he actually did. So he was famous
Oh,
for being one of the first people to kind of go into court and claim that spirits from the other world, like or the other side, were telling him to do it. So he was trying to claim insanity, I guess, or plead insanity for the case. But that's a famous house. Like that's a real house there in Long Island, New York, I believe. A friend of mine actually lives near it.
yeah. That's funny. I don't know much about that. It has so many sequels, evidently, but I've never.
Yeah, they have a. There's a really good, more modern one that is actually kind of based on the true story. It's kind of a mockumentary almost, like the way they shoot it. They shoot it almost like a mockumentary, so it tells you and shows you about the family, and then shows you kind of dramatization, like reenactments of what happened and stuff like that.
Uh, all right. So now we get into the 1980s.
The best. That's the best. That's my favorite.
Okay, I was going to ask you that. In my opinion, the '80s is like the golden age of horror. Like this to me is like the biggest decade for horror. And I was going to say, does that sound accurate? It sounds like you agree with me.
I agree. For me, it's my favorite, and I think this is when horror was the most creative for me. This
Okay.
was when I look at 80s films and horror movies, I just feel like that's when writers and directors were the most unhinged, the most creative. They were just able to go out there and do almost whatever they wanted. And production companies were just like, here's all the money you want. Boom, boom, boom. We don't care. Just get it going, kind of thing, which did spawn a lot of sequels. There's a lot of sequels that came out in the 80s and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
like, as I said, in terms of creativity wise, I've most of the craziest horror films I've seen come out of the 80s. The 90s did have some good stuff too, because the 90s, when you do get into there's more grungy type stuff like that, more rebel type horror. But the 80s, I think, has the greatest plethora of creativity.
Yeah. I mean, well, Shining came out in 1980. I talked about The Shining as a '70s movie. I guess that's not the 80s. I was wrong on that one. I just now look at the notes.
They probably filmed it in 79, but it was released in 80. So, I mean, technically it was filmed in, I think, the 70s.
Yeah. But I mean, to me, there's not a decade that has more iconic franchises than the '80s. Has the most iconic franchises that have made, yeah, tons of movies. And I'm just going to name you, I think, the big ones here. What I think makes the '80s so interesting. You got Halloween, I believe comes out in 1980. You got Friday the 13th, comes out in 1980. Um, you got Child's Play, comes out in 19. These are that order, so this is on my notes.
Yeah.
But Child's Play, '88, made tons of sequels to that as well. It's pretty iconic. Hellraiser comes out in 1987. They made tons of those. The Evil Dead series, 1981, and there's a bunch of those as well. Uh, Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984,
Yeah,
iconic. Tons of sequels to that.
sequels. Yep.
Um, I mean, those right there. I mean, I'm naming like 6 or 7. Just to me, the most iconic franchises we've had in the horror genre, all
Mhm.
come. So I don't know what was the deal with the '80s. They really took off with the horror genre. I mean, like I said, '70s had some iconic stuff, but '80s really. I don't know if it's just directors coming up at this time. Just it was a great era for.
I think
Uh,
also too, this is a big mainstream media era. So kind of before like how we have social media now and how we share and how social media is really huge. I think 80s was the really big first media era of like music, television, movies, but also, kind of pushing the bounds of like let's touch pop culture. Like let's actually have Freddy Krueger in a music video. Let's sell Jason Voorhees hockey masks and like pop hero, all this kind of stuff, merchandise type stuff. So I
that's
think the 80s was the biggest for pushing the boundaries of pop culture and really making the horror community an actual thing.
that's interesting. Okay, that makes sense. That definitely would. Yeah, really. Yeah, because like I said, it felt like a real boom in horror movies. Really
Yeah.
boomed and became one of the most popular fan. I mean, like I said, '70s it probably started getting more popular, but I would venture to say '80s probably is when it got super popular. The horror community, as you say, maybe it
Yeah.
was really at this time even more uh, than even the '70s period. Uh, yeah, it's really interesting all these movies that come out. To me, like the Halloween, like this is really the era of slashers. I would say
Yeah.
Halloween. I mean, like I said, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I don't know if that's the first one. I know people say Black Christmas is like maybe the first slasher movie or something that came out a couple years before Halloween. But I always look at Halloween as like the biggest slasher kind of movie that started. Yeah,
Yeah, that's probably like the most common, most like well known, well seen. Michael Myers is a very common character. John Carpenter, the score, a lot of people know about it. When it comes to my opinion on the first slasher film, I always go back to either, like you said, Psycho or Peeping Tom. For me, those two are like the very early
okay,
templates for how slashers would be done in America.
okay, yeah, that's a good point. Psycho, yeah, kind of goes along that ways. Um, but yeah, Halloween. It's kind of I don't know. This whole thing of guy in a mask. I mean, it becomes very popular. We get a lot of these now. I don't know if that started or that really definitely I think populated that or popular thing is
Yeah.
come up with a creepy mask so you can't see the expression of the killer. I guess is the idea. And give him I mean, like I said, Chainsaw Massacre. You kind of, I guess, maybe that's even before that, I suppose. But Halloween, you got the iconic, big knife.
Yeah,
Yeah.
specific weapon. Yeah, it was like a specific weapon, a design of a character. Because like in the 80s, we had Michael, Jason, Freddy, the miner. We had the miner from My Bloody Valentine, which he has a pickaxe. He has the mining suit and stuff. I'm trying to think of the Prowler, which is a war veteran. He looks like an old war veteran, so he wears like a war veteran suit and he carries a pitchfork.
Okay, pitchfork. Yeah, we get kind of iconic weapons in this period of I mean, yeah, yeah, it's just a big knife, but still, it's pretty iconic to the Michael Myers.
Mhm.
Uh, we get the machete is really kind of the Jason Voorhees weapon, I would say, right?
Yeah, that's his primary weapon. But I always love Jason the most because he's the one that ventures out the
Oh, really?
most and tries other stuff. Yeah, he like uses axes and throwing knives and weed whackers and all kinds of stuff.
I like that. Yeah, I like my serial killer to be
Versatile. Yeah,
like
flexible.
a versatile. That's good. Freddy Krueger has the claw hands. I don't know what you call
Yeah, the
it.
glove. Yeah, that's what's cool because he created his. The glove hand is pretty cool because Freddie
Oh,
designed that and created that, so that's pretty cool.
oh, it's great. I mean, it looks, yeah, the character looks horrifying with it. When I was a kid, I remember seeing, like, I never watched these movies, but I was aware of these movies existing, and I would see clips maybe on TV of like and they freaked me out. As a kid, yeah, I like that. Or like definitely maybe the most freaky character to me was Freddy Krueger. Such a really, I mean, cool design of a character, I'd say. Um, the whole burnt up face and the
Yeah.
hat and the shirt and the glove, yeah, and just his voice too. Just I can't think of a line, but I'm sure there's like
Oh yeah, Robert England. Yeah, my favorite one is probably part two when he says, "You are all my children now," and he's like looking at all the kids, and he like just says that, and you're like, "What the fuck?" Like you're like, oh, in your mind, you're like, "Who the hell's this guy?"
I mean, it's a scary voice, kind of a low, kind of scary voice too. He puts on, I think, if I
Yeah.
remember right. But yeah, yeah. I don't know. Do you have a favorite? I think the gloved hand is my favorite, iconic.
So my favorite weapon. Oh man, That's actually a good question. Actually, a favorite like iconic slasher weapon. That's a good one. Damn, I don't know. Yeah, off the top of my head, like that's a pretty hard pick
Yeah.
because there's a lot of different things that I like. Mm, I don't know. You know which one that I think is kind of cool, but it's never really been done right in a movie is like, how Death always carries like the scythe? Like the scythe is a cool looking weapon. Even in animes, they make the scythe look so badass, but then you never really seen like an actual horror character use that weapon and it'd be awesome.
Oh, that'd be a good weapon.
Yeah, but I'd probably have to go just because Jason. Yeah, I'd probably and the utility of the knife and stuff, the machete. I'd probably have to go that one.
Yeah, that's a good one. Uh, yeah, I guess I just my thoughts a little bit. I have seen Halloween, the first Halloween movie,
Yeah,
uh, just for kind of educational purposes because I was like, I felt like it's such an iconic movie, like I had to watch it, to
yeah,
see. Uh, yeah, I mean, most of it is just Michael just creeping on people and just like it's like you see him and then you do a double take and he's gone. You're like, oh, what happened? They call him the Shape. In fact, I saw like this
yeah,
I saw this making of thing on Netflix, and it was kind of interesting because it's very low budget. Like it felt like they didn't know what they're doing, yet they came up with this iconic horror movie. But it's like they were just kind of winging it. It felt like
yeah.
I don't think they knew what they had, when they were doing it. And I mean, you do get a iconic, what's her name, Jamie Lee Curtis,
Yeah,
a young,
Laurie Strode. Yeah, she's probably one of the most
yeah,
popular final girls.
yeah, oh yeah, and she's now an Oscar-winning actress. I mean, so it's funny to see Jamie Lee Curtis kind of get in this horror slasher. And we see a lot of that though, because like young John Travolta's and um,
Carrie.
Carrie, young Kevin Bacon, we see in Friday 13th, I believe.
Yeah, Johnny Depp was in Nightmare on Elm Street.
Nightmare. It's just crazy. It's like all these great actors, they get started in these horror movies. It's
Yeah,
interesting. But yeah, overall, like I mean, the final part is like the most exciting part, of course, where she's being kind of chased in the house, and she stabs him. You think she got him, and then he does the like
yeah,
Undertaker,
he
like
just sits up. Yeah,
it's great. And then um, yeah, it's like Halloween's not one of my big favorites of the genre, I would say, but obviously very iconic. And like I said, there's been so many sequels. I'm sure they did more with the character in the sequels.
yeah.
I don't know what you think. Is there a favorite in that series?
So my favorite is still the original one is still my favorite, but a close second is probably I like Halloween 5 a lot, and I'm one of those defenders of Halloween 5, but I can understand why a lot of people don't like that. But also Rick Rosenthal's Halloween 2 from I believe it was 1981 or 1982. That one's really good, and I like it because it takes place in the same night. So when you watch John Carpenter's Halloween and you watch Halloween 2, it's kind of a great double feature watch because they executed it and it works pretty well. Almost seamless. The only problem is that Michael Myers' mask looks vastly different, but that's because they got a different actor to play him, and the mask is the same mask that they used from the first movie, but Deborah Hill kept it like in her apartment like under her bed, and they back then they smoked and they did whatever they wanted and had parties, so they didn't take care of the mask, so it kind of changed color, and the mask actually fits Dick Warlock's face different, so it looks a little different.
Interesting. Yeah, this is like the first time we get like this. You get the super. Oh, I don't know. Michael Myers. He's just a guy. I mean, I think the whole story is just as a kid he like goes psycho and murders a sibling or something, and then he gets institutionalized and he breaks out and wants to murder the other sister. That seems to be the whole thing. In fact, we just got some Halloween movies recently with like Halloween Ends, Halloween Kills.
Yeah,
It's that franchise never going to die. It seems like we keep getting new parts. And I heard
yeah,
they're not,
they're going to TV now. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make a television show now.
I know there's a lot of complaints about the recent movies. That's all I heard about when they came out. Everybody's like, "Oh, I hated this," and I'm like, So I guess it didn't. Well, anyways, but it starts this whole like you just can't kill him. Like it's like you shoot him, you stab him, he just keeps getting up. Like kind of I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I think. In the '80s, it was kind of Jason.
Yeah,
Michael was a representation of just evil incarnate itself, but then Jason Voorhees was kind of like this slap in the face almost towards like mothers who were protesting against horror movies in the '80s. So like when you watch Jason movies, the kids that all die are kids that do things that were very frowned upon. Like they smoke pot, they have premarital sex, they, don't listen to their parents. They go here and they, go to this building where they're not supposed to go, and then they get dispatched. So it was kind of like Jason Voorhees like was used to be like, oh, this way of like listen to your parents.
that's yeah. Keith points out Janet Leigh is Jamie Lee's mother. Yep,
Yep.
she was the girl in first part of Psycho. Yeah, so kind of cool through line there for characters.
Yeah, and then they did bring her back too for a
Yeah,
Halloween H2O. She plays Jamie Lee Curtis's like secretary or something. Her mom
yeah,
plays her secretary or something.
that's pretty cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
um, yeah, and yeah, again, Friday 13th, obviously very another huge franchise. I don't know if they made any recently, but they make them every once in a while. I see remakes of
It's been
these.
a minute. Yeah. So Jason, it's been, I think, 13, 14 years now since we've gotten one. It's been a
Yeah,
long time.
it has been quite a long time for that one, but it seems like that's one that'll never die. I'm sure they'll keep making.
They
Uh,
have fan films if people are interested. There are some really good fan films on YouTube if you want to check them out. There's a couple of Voorhees, Never Hike Alone, Never Hike Alone 2. Those are some really good fan films.
okay. Again, I do love the character design though. We don't get it in the first movie though. That's a funny thing. I think that didn't
Yeah.
come maybe the third movie. I think till we get to like the
Yeah. So the iconic look of Jason where he looks now, yeah, you don't get that till the third movie.
yeah, God. I was gonna say in Halloween. I think isn't like the third Halloween movie like the bad one in the franchise where you don't.
Everybody, yeah, that's kind of the outlier because that was the first one where they did not. Michael was not in it. Michael Myers wasn't in it,
That's
and they
crazy.
went like the anthology route. They were going to go telling different stories that took place on Halloween.
Uh,
So this was the first like attempt, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch and stuff. But there are some people who really love it.
it just sounds weird. Like you don't have Michael Myers. What the heck, Uh, it's funny. Halloween, not the greatest. Like I said, Takes the Chainsaw Massacre. Nightmare on Elm Street. That's a pretty good title.
Yeah.
Halloween's pretty basic. Friday 13th kind of basic, but I mean,
Yeah, that's kind of a play on just the holiday horror thing because they have a My Bloody Valentine and Mother's Day, all that kind of stuff. Groundhog Day. They kind of just any holiday they picked, they would do a horror film for.
exactly. Yeah, that's very true. But yeah, Friday 13th. I think, man, great. The hockey mask. The kind of he usually wears like a jacket or coat. I think, and
Yeah, it's just kind of like a button up, or like sometimes it's a overcoat thing, and then just like slacks, and
yeah,
carries his machete with the little holster.
Eddie. And it's funny because I've seen two movies. I've seen the original Friday 13th, which is not what you think it is. Kind of, yeah, because you don't see Jason's not even in it. To be honest, that's a spoiler, but somebody is killing people, and there's some pretty bad kills. Well, the one I think about is Kevin Bacon gets it through the throat.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Gets stabbed, I think, or something. That's pretty good. It's like, oh my god. Yeah, and there's a twist. That movie is big on the twist mostly,
Yeah.
which I didn't see coming. But I like the story idea actually of kid drowns at a camp when the
Counselors aren't paying attention. Yeah.
counselor should have been watching, but I think they're having sex or something like that. And Jason drowns, which great name for a horror character, Jason, anyways. But um, and then he's getting revenge by killing like all these Camp Crystal Lake, I believe.
Yeah.
And so it's all about, again, like I said, it seems to be a very popular thing. Kill good-looking, young people that are doing, like you said, doing things they shouldn't be doing. So, yeah, that's a pretty good setting for a horror movie. Yeah, I've seen Jason Lives, I think, is the other one I saw.
Nice.
Where this guy goes and he goes to Jason's grave and then lightning hits and it brings Jason.
Yeah, he sticks like a fence post in his chest and lightning hits him. Yeah.
What an idiot. He just brought back the guy, and then he just goes back to I don't know if Crystal Lake, but he goes back to like the camp and starts killing people or something.
Yeah, and in that one, it's named a different name because they're trying to move on past the Crystal Lake thing. But I like part 6 because that's the only one that actually has kids at the camp. Like that's the only movie where there's actually kids at the camp when he attacks.
That's true. I was like, oh, please don't hurt any kids. I don't think he does. I think he just kills the kids.
No, yeah, he doesn't get any of the kids. He does get this cop though. One of my favorite kills is the cop who's like punching him and beating him, and he's like on top of Jason, like mounting him. Yeah. And then you kind of see this look in Jason's face where he's just like, okay, I'm done with this. And he just folds the guy back all the way. And I'm like, oh my God.
I was like, oh, something bad's going to happen to this guy.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen. That's going to be bad. Yeah. It's funny because Jason's, again, I guess it's the idea is that he comes back from the dead, I guess. I don't know, but he has supernatural like strength, I guess. And
yeah, that was the first movie. Yeah, part 6 is when they introduced the like Deadite or zombie type Jason. That's what they call him. Yeah.
Yeah, and he gets shot. Like, I think the cop shoots him a bunch of times. It doesn't do anything. So like, oh god, to me, the scene that got me was he grabs this one girl and he just twists her head off like a lid on a.
Yeah, like a bottle. It's just like boop.
He just twists it right off. And I'm like, oh my god. That was pretty horrifying too. But yeah, lots of kills in that one too. And it's funny.
Yeah.
It's funny. I don't know why. I was with somebody and they're like, "Hey, let's watch this." I'm like, I'm not into it, but I watched it and I was like, It was funner being with somebody. I think by myself it wouldn't have been so much fun, but because you can kind of make fun of some of the people that get killed. Like, one idiot,
Yep.
But yeah, I don't know if that's a big one. I think that's one I heard people like quite a bit. So
yeah, I would say Jason Lives is probably the most popular answer, or final chapter. Those are like the two. Part 4 and part 6 are like the ones that are the most popular answer, I think. Even the remake's really good though too. A lot of people don't talk about it as much, but the remake did a really good job where they kind of combined the first 3 movies into one film. They kind of shortened it and like just combined them and compacted them into one movie.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, he doesn't really get it because I remember I've seen like reviews of all the movies and like even the second one, he wears like a bag over his head and I don't think he even has a machete. And it's like what are we doing?
Sackhead Jason. Yeah.
Yeah, but still, I think great design of a character. Again, the mask and everything. Again, the whole trope of killing the young people and pretty good time period. Nightmare on Elm Street. I've only seen one. I saw the original of that one.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so much creepy stuff. The hand coming out of the bathtub. Oh my gosh, that's so good.
Whoever that lucky man was, yeah, he got to sit down there with Heather Langenkamp for a long time. He got to lay in the bathtub with Heather Langenkamp for a long time.
Yeah, I didn't think how they shot that, but Whoever it
Yeah, there
was.
was a man like in the
Heather.
tub, like under her. Like there's a man in the tub and stuff, and he had to. Yeah, he said for a good portion of the day he got to sit in the tub with Heather.
Wow. But I mean, the imagery is really good in that movie. I would say, like, yeah, stuff like
Yeah,
one guy, he's Johnny Depp. Oh my gosh, he like gets sucked into the bed, and then blood just goes. It's like that was
yeah,
pretty.
that was probably one of the most iconic kill scenes, and the fact that they rigged an entire room to a whole room that you can just rotate, like, and you rotate a whole room like that. The concept of that is pretty insane.
Yeah, and what's great about Freddy Krueger. I mean, what a great name, anyways. Freddy Krueger, and the design, like I said, so great, and just the fact that he kind of taunts his victims. I think because
Yeah,
like I said, like Jason and Michael Myers they don't talk, so they but Freddy he can insult you, he can whatever, say horrific things.
throw one liners. Yeah, he's very kitschy, like niche. And
I've heard, like I said, I've only seen the first one. A lot of people say I think the third one's their favorite. I want to say the Dream Warriors, or is that
yeah,
second?
that's Rashad's favorite. Yeah, Rashad said that one. That's his favorite, and that's probably, I would say, the most fun Freddy movie. Like
I'll
the
just,
one that, yeah, it has like all elements of scary Freddy, but it has a lot of fun stuff too in it as well.
yeah, like there's some funny lines or something in there. I think the
Yeah,
one he does he pulls a girl's head into like a TV or something like that and says like "Welcome to
yeah,
Prime."
and he says, "Welcome to prime time." Yeah, yep.
Oh yeah, yeah, stuff like that. But yeah, great. Again, pretty good. I like the story behind that. He's like supposed to be like a guy who gets killed by the parents, I think, and burned,
Yep.
and then comes back to haunt the nightmares of the kids. That's a pretty good storyline. I kind of can get on top of that. Again, I was only seen one. Don't know if I can watch too many of those. Those look pretty gross. Some of the and nightmares. I mean, it's pretty interesting idea overall. Um, Child's Play. I haven't seen any of those Child's Play movies. Dolls are creepy.
Okay.
Oh my gosh! Like I've just seen clips and I just creeped out by the doll.
I
Uh,
like Brad Dourif. Yeah, the voice Brad Dourif's great because he's the voice of Chucky. Yeah.
and I know him from Lord of the Rings, and stuff. And it's like, yeah, and he's the doll. Yeah, great voice. Creepy character, creepy as heck character. Um,
Yeah, that first one is the probably the scariest one, and I like it because that first one they build it up very well, so that way the first time when he does talk, it's shocking, like it's really shocking. So like the if you like Chucky, like you said, like Freddy, and you want the one liners, you want all that kitschy like kind of comedy stuff, you're gonna go to the later films. But if you want to actually be scared, you're probably gonna watch the first film because I think the first Child's Play is the one that's the most scary one.
really? Okay.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, that's another character that kind of he does have funny one-liners on he at times. Uh,
yeah.
um, yeah, I think, and it kind of goes in comedy, like The Bride of Chucky. I think it's kind of more comic, maybe.
Yeah, that was the first. That was the first one where they really dipped in their toes into that campy comedy nature.
Yeah, that was my sense. Yeah, I mean, man, I mean, again, interesting idea for a story. Like, guy puts his soul into a doll before he dies, really, and then tries to resurrect himself or something through like
Yeah,
voodoo.
and then he needs the body of a because the rule is through the voodoo thing. The rule is that he has to use the body of the first person he reveals himself to.
Which
So
is
because Andy's the boy that he talks to first.
exactly, yeah. So there's some good elements there. Iconic. Friend Scott from Sound Studio says Shiny his favorite horror movie.
Nice. That's just that.
I think it's a good one. Yeah.
Oh, but then too, Jason, I wanted to let you know the kids will be getting out from school soon, so I'll have to wrap up pretty soon in a little bit.
Okay. Just watch Halloween. Yeah, good one.
Nice.
Chucky is not scary at all. I mean, serial killer transferring his conscience to a doll via. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I haven't seen it, but
Yeah,
um,
like the first one, I like that first one because, like I said, I feel like that one is the scariest, but maybe it's because also the fact that they're trying to take Andy away from the mom because they think Andy's crazy. That's also another element of the movie that is kind of scary because if you think about it, like you don't want to be taken away from your own mom.
that's true. True. Um, Okay, we'll talk about the '90s. Maybe if I don't know. To me, the most significant one is maybe Scream. Really took off. Ghostface, iconic design as well. It seems like he's just a big knife too, but uh,
Yeah, the I guess the best thing about Scream is the fact that it changed the slasher genre hardcore because at that time the slasher genre was just redone over and over and over. No one had really done anything kind of new with it yet, and then Scream was like, "Well, we're gonna come in and we're gonna kind of break the fourth wall a little bit. Our characters are gonna be knowledgeable in horror films, but they're still gonna get dispatched."
yeah, yeah. And it's not supernatural. It's just people dressed up, I think,
Yeah, it's just a person dressed up in the costume. Yeah.
and it's iconic for like the first scene was like a shock scene. Uh,
Yeah, the fact that Drew Barrymore was billed as the leading actress for the movie. Yeah,
um, but we also get Leprechaun, kind of I don't know if it's very popular, but it's fairly well known. With what's his name?
Warwick Davis played the Leprechaun. Yeah, Warwick. Yeah,
I haven't seen any of those movies, but I know you talk about them. I know what you did last summer was kind of a cool horror movie idea, kind of revenge movie. I think they run
yeah,
some hit and run, and then kind of iconic. He has like a hook or something. I think.
yeah. The was it the fisherman hook thing? Yeah, that's what he uses. Yep.
Tremors. I love Tremors. I don't know if that's called horror, but
Nice. Yeah,
I
that's
I like
one of the
horror.
best horror comedies. That's a good pick, man.
I love the creature design. Yeah, the whole Kevin Bacon's great. I've always been a big fan of that one.
Rest in peace, Fred Ward. We love you. He's a good actor. I love Fred Ward in that movie.
Good. And then Candyman was kind of a well-known franchise as well. That starts the whole. I think you see Candyman 3 times from that, and he comes or whatever.
Yeah, that
And
was a good folk horror movie. Candyman's a good one.
yeah, and they've done some remakes of that as well. I think the last 20 years, the biggest one maybe is Saw. I don't know what do you think?
Yeah,
The
in terms of franchises, I would say Saw and The Conjuring are probably the two biggest franchises now. And Conjuring mainly because I think kids are really obsessed with that ghost thing. Like I've noticed even my daughters when I watch scary movies with my daughters, they typically are more scared of like the ghost type story stuff, like the ones of the other, there's something else on the other side of the veil, but you can't really see it or touch it, but it is able to affect your house or the world you live in.
I don't know much about The Conjuring. I hear that about it all the time.
Yeah.
Uh, the Purge makes quite a bit of movies as well. It's kind of interesting series. And then you get stuff like The Ring. I know was very popular back in the days, like the
Yeah,
Korean
The
horror.
Ring was good. Yeah, because that was kind of Americans looking at Japanese horror because Ringu was the first one. It was Japanese, so that was kind of our take on looking at Japanese horror because they were really pushing the boundaries, and Americans doing remakes of them.
Um, so who's the big horror? Who's the next? I don't know. Who's the current like horror director today or recently? I mean, I was thinking. I mean, Rob Zombie was he was making some popular
Yeah,
ones.
he was a big one. Yeah,
Um, I keep hearing James Wan as one that keeps making some popular horror movies.
yeah.
Uh,
In terms of directors right now, my absolute favorite horror director in the game right now is Ty West, and that's because Ty West, like I said earlier, I brought him up when we were talking about Alfred Hitchcock. He has that Alfred Hitchcock way of playing with tension. And like there's a
okay.
movie he did called The House of the Devil, came out in 2012. And it's not a remake of the original one from back in the day or anything like that, but it's his own version. And it's a movie where like about 70% of the movie nothing really happens, but he's able to keep you enthralled and invested in this character, and then in the last like 12 minutes like everything just goes off the wall and you're like what the like it's a totally different movie, like the last 12 minutes is like a different movie completely. So for me, Ty West is my favorite horror director in the game right now.
He's big on was it X, Pearl, and Maxine, or like
Yeah, that's his biggest new thing. Yeah, he did the X trilogy for A24, which was really cool because he did that first film, and because of COVID and what happened with the COVID shutdown, they shut them down and they couldn't leave. So they basically wrote Pearl in that time frame, and then they shot the movie and led into them eventually doing Maxine as well.
Um, I was just gonna, I guess, just barely get into my favorite genre is probably horror comedy. uh,
Nice.
and I just Young Frankenstein kind of throw in there. It's a parody of Frankenstein. Great comedy. I guess you can put Ghostbusters in there. It has kind of a horror kind
Definitely.
of, they've been making a lot of those recently. This is my favorite horror comedy, probably Zombieland. I love Zombieland.
Nice, dude. Yeah, I like Woody Harrelson in that, and then the Bill Murray joke is great in that one too.
One of the funniest cameos of all time. I love that.
Yep.
This is another really good zombie. It's a Warm Bodies. It's a zombie
Little
romance.
love story. Yeah, a little love story one. That's cool.
I really like it. It's another. I really, like I said, I really like the zombie genre. Shaun of the Dead, of course, another one that was really popular. I like this one too. What We Do in the Shadows, which is a mockumentary on
Nice.
vampires living in New Zealand. Really funny movie. Taika Waititi directed and wrote and kind of stars in. But you can go with like the Gremlins, or kind of I would say horror comedy. You put in there as well. Beetlejuice, I think you can kind of put in that horror comedy.
Definitely.
I just watched
Yeah,
Beetlejuice. I thought it was a really funny movie.
oh, did you watch the second one yet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked it. I thought it was actually really fun. Mark Keaton's so good as the Beetlejuice character. It's a fun character.
Yeah, it was really cool. I like Bob, and Monica Bellucci was cool too. I just wanted a little bit more of her villain character.
Yeah, that's true. She kind of comes and goes. Yeah, the Addams Family, of course, goes into that as well. Tucker and Dale vs. Evil. I love that movie. It's almost like a parody because they look like the two main characters look like the horror villains, but they're just nice guys. They're just regular guys or
Oh
hillbilly.
yeah, I think it's funny. Yeah, when they're shopping and he like looks at what was it, Tucker or whatever. He's like, pickled eggs, a 5-pounder, and he's like,
I love he goes approaches he like wants to go talk to these girls, but he's like holding like a scythe or whatever.
yeah. He walks up. Yeah, he walks up there at the scythe, and they're like, oh, what the.
It's like that's not a good look. Anyways, but yeah, I love a lot of the horror comedies as well. I was going to end by just asking you, is there a horror franchise that you most would recommend to people? I don't know if that makes
Okay, so, oh wow, that's a good question too. Because my favorite horror franchise is Friday the 13th. That's the one that kind of got me obsessed with horror. But it is like being such a huge fan of it. I must say that it is very kind of almost wash, rinse, repeat sometimes. So like I know how some people could get tired of it because it does recycle the same concepts over and over and over. I just eat it up because I love the concept of it and stuff. But I would say a horror franchise that I would tell people to dive into, I would say for me, it would probably be Evil Dead. I would say it would be one of the most number one recommended ones. One that I think is the strongest horror franchise in terms of strength because I think every film is good. I don't think there's a bad film in that franchise. And it's got these different kind of highs and lows where it's very scary, it's very grotesque, but then there's also some very comedy heavy ones. Like I know for example, like Jason, your favorite would probably be Army of Darkness, would probably be your favorite because it's very comedy heavy, kind of almost like Monty Python type comedy.
Yeah. Oh, what's his name? The lead actor is pretty funny.
Bruce Campbell, yeah, as Ash.
And doesn't he have like I want to say he has like a chainsaw for an arm or something crazy like
Yeah,
that.
he cuts off his hand, yeah, and puts a chainsaw on it. Yeah, I have let's see right here. Just like blow off the dust, the Toonie Terror of it.
Yeah. Is there a overrated franchise in your opinion, or?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like if that's kind of funny. You asked me that. My number one answer is always Saw. It's always Saw. So that's why I have such a complicated relationship with James Wan. Why I kind of want him to do Creature from the Black Lagoon, but I'm kind of hesitant because I like some of the stuff he's brought to the horror community. Don't get me wrong, but for me, Saw is probably the number one most overrated franchise in horror.
Keith mentions Brian De Palma's Dress to Kill and American Wolf London, directed by John Landis, are good scary movies. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'll end with this. Is there a horror franchise or movie that you think is underrated that isn't talked about enough?
Okay. An underrated one. So I'm gonna go because there is apparently a remake coming for this one, so I kind of want to talk it up just to get more hype for it. The People Under the Stairs. That's a Wes Craven movie from the '90s, and Jordan Peele brought the rights to do a
Uh,
remake to it. So why I want that one to be talked about more is because it takes the whole invading someone's home concept and flips it on its head. It was the first movie to really do that. So where like you're a thief, you're going to go break into someone's home and you think you're the antagonist, you're the guy who's going to get away with all this stuff, but then come to find out the home you broke into is not the home you want to be in, and these people are going to try to kill you, you know. That's why I like People Under the Stairs. And then it's got some really good stuff too on social commentary about like the class systems of rich people and poor people and stuff. So I think that's probably the most underrated horror film in my opinion, and one of Wes Craven's most underrated films too.
yeah, yeah, that's a Jordan Peele. That's another, kind of. He seems to be a big horror director right now.
Yep.
He's one of the most sought after ones as well. Interesting enough, but yeah, I'll end the stream here. We could venture more into the '90s or the 2000s, but I'm glad we got to the '80s. To me, that's the big period of time.
Yeah, we could do like a part two. We can go all the way from the '90s into the modern era and stuff.
We do that. But hopefully we saw. I guess my idea was like we see the trends of like where it started, kind of where it really started. Developing in the '80s. Obviously, I think the big thing is just that you can be more graphic, and so that really horror genre as it went on, and so you can do more scary or more gross things.
Yeah, push the boundaries.
Yeah, you can push the boundaries basically, and that's kind of what we see the trend. I think probably throughout, and going from monsters to you got zombie slashers, ghosts. Those are all kind of big trends that we see. I mean, today, like I said, I guess I don't know, zombies still a trend today, but I'm not sure what the big trend is right now. I suppose that'd be another
Right
good question.
now, I would say right now, to be honest, I would say it's body horror. Like I think body horror because we recently had this movie come out called The Substance with Demi Moore,
Yeah,
and yeah, body horror is really popular now because I think it's all practical effects. Everybody's so impressed by the stuff that these people are able to pull off in these movies, and I think body horror has some of the highest concepts that are like actually like intellectually make you think.
that's interesting. I was just now thinking. Yeah, I suppose every decade has its own social commentary. I suppose, like you've been talking about that a lot in these horror movies. I suppose that
Yeah.
resembles. I was trying to think, what's the social commentary today? I suppose it'd be social media. I'm guessing that would be the big thing today to do. I see that. I think there's a movie called Streaming or something like that just came out.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's one called Stream. There's a Dead Stream came out a couple years ago. Um,
or
there's
I don't know.
there's that one Spree, that one that Joe Keery did from Stranger Things. He did a movie called Spree where he plays like a share ride person. That was a horror movie.
Yeah, so I'm guessing that would be technology. The way it is, and social media that'd be probably where horror movies today would be new and interesting, I guess, or yeah, new ideas maybe would come from
Yeah,
that.
because
Yeah,
horror always has its kind of a word says like it has a finger on the pulse of society. They always have their finger like right there, kind of.
like even Paranormal Activity. What was interesting about that is how it used video footage. It was almost like capture film, like oh, we're just watching a security camera, and that's how we're seeing everything. So it's kind of
Yeah,
interesting. Use technology in that anyway. So, but yeah, that's I just thought of that.
the
Because I'm sure trends every decade trends will change, and
yeah.
we get the remakes, but we're gonna get new stuff probably every decade. Um, right. Anyways, but yeah. So thanks a lot, Norin, for joining me and talking about my least favorite genre, but still I think an interesting this conversation discussion on a big genre that It's still huge today. Like I said, Terrifier 3, everybody talks about Terrifier 3. I didn't even talk about that. That's like the big thing right now is the Terrifier franchise.
Yeah.
And how, yeah, the boundaries they push and all that. um, Definitely one I'm not checking out. But yeah, Norin 89 is your channel. You cover all kinds of movies. You do horror is definitely your big thing, I think.
Yeah, I do other stuff too. Yeah, so like my channel, I mostly cover horror. I do rankings, reviews, all that kind of stuff. But I've been recently collecting vinyls, so I've been tackling music content now too. And then whenever I feel like it, wrestling. I try to do wrestling content, but it's not as much as the other stuff. But I want to do more wrestling content too, talking about AEW and stuff and everything like that. So yeah, that's where you can find me, NorrAd89. Description, all be in the link, all that jazz.
Check it out. Great channel. Great friend too. I really appreciate getting to know you the last 2 years, Norn.
Thanks, Jason. It's been a blast.
Yes. So thank you and appreciate it. And thank you to all the people commenting. I know Keith, Mark, Scott was in there
Mike was here. Yeah, Mike.
as well. Yeah. And Ryan at the beginning. So appreciate you guys commenting. I always like that. And comment about your favorite horror movies, I guess, and horror genres.
Yep,
Whatever.
let us know.
Let us know. Anyways, yeah. So thanks from Norn Rad, me. Have a great rest of I guess we're getting the weekend. So have a good weekend and we'll see you later.
Peace out.